Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the episode. You can follow me on social media at Galen Trombley. I hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings.
Please hold for a very important message.
Lightspeed sequence initiated.
How may I help you?
Bonjour.
Security breach.
The truth shall set you free. Awesome. It's a miracle.
Stabilize. 3, 2, 1. Mission complete.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
And then we're good to go. Welcome, everybody. Episode 239, Galen Trombley Show. Guest today, Casey McClain. I've known Casey for a pretty good while now at this point. I thought you were a returning guest. This is actually your first appearance, which, again, memory is terrible, but I think this will be fun. I just read through his questionnaire, and I have a lot of questions already, but we'll get through all the boring stuff first. We'll talk about like all the work and all that backstory, but then we'll have some fun. So, Casey, for people who do not know you, who are you? How'd you get here? How'd you get from Brazier Falls?
So that was a long story. So I actually grew up, both my parents growing up were both United Methodist ministers, which is something probably not a lot of people know about me, especially if they know me well. It's a hard time for them to grasp that I came from any kind of a religious background. I moved around a lot. They had several different churches they were in charge of, so we moved from parsonage to parsonage based on, where they were currently preaching. So, I grew up in Brazier Falls, lived there for several years, moved to another town called Nickelville, New York, which is also a tiny little town in the middle of nowhere. It's basically would be the flyover of northern New York area. If you're going from like Plattsburgh to Potsdam,
Okay.
You would drive through it, that kind of situation. Really small town. Ended up, lived there for quite a while. Ended up going to Norwich University. I kind of realized in my high school career that I could go to, several different schools. The only problem was that I knew if I didn't go to some place that had some kind of enforced discipline that I would probably not graduate.
Okay.
So I went to a military school by my own choice, not a decision somebody else made. Went to Norwich, graduated from Norwich with a degree in communications, which had nothing to do with any industry I've ever worked in, which is, fantastic. Left Norwich, I moved over to Plattsburgh, lived here for a while, ended up working in retail. So got a college degree, went into working in retail, honestly started out selling shoes. So
Wait, so how'd you go from Norwich to, so did you graduate from Norwich?
Yes.
All 4 years?
Yep.
And then how'd you get to Plattsburgh from Norwich? Like, what was the reason to go make the jump?
So I actually came back to Plattsburgh. I had 2 more classes to finish my degree.
Okay.
So moved back to Plattsburgh because I was able to take the classes here at SUNY Plattsburgh. Took my last 2 classes here. Did an internship at Mountain Lake PBS.
Okay.
To get my internship out of the way. So I moved back to Plattsburgh for that. Made some good friends when I was here. And this was kind of, when growing up in a small town, Plattsburgh was like a big city.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like there's something to do here, which
Yeah.
was great. You could walk somewhere and actually go to a restaurant.
What's the biggest from you? Was it Potsdam or Messina bigger?
So Messina was bigger.
Okay.
Way back in the day, before all of the factories there closed.
Okay.
Once all the factories closed, I think Potsdam kind of took the lead there just because of the colleges.
Okay.
So between Clarkson
So
and
like you would have
Potsdam.
went more to Potsdam direction
Yeah.
for like stuff to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Ended up here in Plattsburgh, worked in retail, ended up moving into a management position in retail, moved to Burlington, worked over in Burlington for a couple of years. Then I moved down to central New York, in Utica, which that's its whole other story. That was a horrible, it was a good and bad experience there.
Was it work related?
Yeah.
The move? Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they transferred me down to Utica, basically helped turn the store down there around, which was a great experience.
Okay.
Great resume builder.
I'm reading some stuff. I'm like, keep going.
Moved down there. I was in Utica for about 6 or 7 years working as an operations manager down there.
Okay.
Just kind of
In shoes.
in the whole store. So
Okay.
I was the operations director for the store.
Okay.
And we went from, I think, like the 7th or 8th largest by volume to the 3rd largest in the district, which was like most of northern New York area.
Okay.
While I was there. So got to do a lot of really cool stuff there. Ended up leaving there on not great terms. Not by anyone at my store. Had a person higher up in management that didn't necessarily agree with how I worked. So I moved on from there. And at the time, my girlfriend was looking to go to SUNY Plattsburgh to do her master's degree for teaching. So I was like, well, let's go back to Plattsburgh. I liked living there. It was something that always struck me that I think a lot of people look at Plattsburgh as, and even just this region as a whole, as kind of being like, it can feel like a black hole. Like you get sucked in and you never leave. And people feel like, oh, you don't get to experience stuff. And, after leaving and then seeing what else, some of the other stuff that's out there and coming back, I'm like, yeah, there's a reason it's a black hole. And really it's because it's a great place to live. There's always stuff to do. There's things around you in every direction. I always kind of get upset when people are like, oh, there's nothing to do here. And I'm like, you mean there's nothing on TV? Because if you wanted to look for something to do, you can find stuff to do. So we moved back up here.
What year is this?
This was probably 2012, 2013.
How old are you now?
44.
44? Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. So it's a good guess, right? Yeah.
79. So you do the math, you figure
kind of
out.
like early mid-30s, moved back to town?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I was, so moved back up here, ended up getting a job in manufacturing, basically just as a supervisor on the production floor. Had a position come open for environmental health and safety. They asked if I was interested in doing that, and I said, yeah, sure. I've been doing a little bit of that stuff, just kind of helping out the person who'd been in that role. Jumped into that role and found out it was something that I was very passionate about and really enjoyed doing. So I worked there for several years, worked from being the EHS manager for the plant here to a platform role with 4 other facilities, basically helping lead them. Then moved into led one of the corporate programs with 42 facilities all around the world, about 8,000 to 10,000 employees. So, that was a great opportunity to do that, get to see a lot of other places. It was a lot of travel.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah, I was on the road a lot. It was probably, I think at that point, initially they're like, oh, it's about 25% travel. And I'm like, no, it's actually about 25% not travel. It was quite a bit more.
How many weeks or how many days of the month do you think you were gone, percentage wise or amount wise?
I would say probably for a while I was averaging probably 2 weeks out of every month that I was traveling.
Yeah.
And it was either like down to like Southgate in Los Angeles, Oklahoma City, Chicago, Macon, Georgia, Mile in Ohio. Like we had facilities all over. Denver was our home office, so I was there quite a bit. So yeah, there was just a ton of travel. And then the position that I'm currently in, good friend of both of ours, Ryan Lee.
Yep.
He actually knew this position was coming. Knew there was a position open in loss prevention, which was, kind of what I was doing. Told HR, hey, you should reach out to him, see if he's interested. So they, Hickok and Boardman reached out and said, hey, you were recommended for this role. Is it something you'd be interested in? So I talked to him for a little bit and said, well, my biggest thing right now is probably, I had a lot of other companies that had reached out, kind of headhunting and doing that stuff. And the biggest issue was always salary, because, they want to pay a entry-level salary to somebody with 15 years of experience. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not real interested. So talked to them and they were like, hey, this is what we can do. And I was like, that absolutely sounds perfect. Started with Hickok and Boardman about 2 years ago as a loss prevention advisor. The manager of the department retired about a year ago. And from there, I stepped into that role. And now here I am.
So just for people that don't know, like that position, like what's kind of your, like elevators pitch kind of thing of like, what do you do on a day to day, or what's your main areas of focus, throughout the role?
So we do a lot of stuff. Our biggest goal really is we are kind of we assist a lot of small businesses, medium-sized businesses that may not have real strong health and safety programs. We go in and we try and find out ways to help them reduce the risk to their employees, to their facilities, whatever it might be. So, we go in, we'll do training on, health and safety stuff. We will go in, we'll do like mock OSHA inspections. So we walk through as if we were an OSHA inspector, look for any safety concerns, any issues that might be in their facility, help them come up with plans to figure those out. We do now one of the kind of the big things that's out there is what it's called safety culture. It's just kind of really kind of driving that safety to be a part of what your organization does. So we've been focusing a lot of stuff on that with trying to help organizations build out that safety culture. So it's just what they do and not something they do because they have to. Because we see great results in organizations that do that. So they have much lower rates of injuries. So we go in and we just basically help our companies and all of our clients figure out how to do that.
Is there ways, I mean, again, looking at stuff with like safety, is there a lot of stuff with like inefficient models that you can change too that might, even though it helps with safety, might help, just production value or just speed of, turn or whatever that might be?
Oh yeah. I mean, one of the things
I like the operation background kind of.
Yeah. And having that operations part in my background helps because I understand that there are going to be, in safety, there's a lot of obstacles. People don't want to they don't want to spend the money. They don't want to spend the time on it. We really focus in on, hey, how do we help you build this out and help them understand, when you take care of that safety issue, everything else follows along. I've seen that in the past for, my past employers. I've seen it with clients when we can help overcome that concern of like, hey, safety is just money that we have to throw and there's no return on that investment. When you do that, the actual results are that you have employees now that aren't focused on, hey, I need to keep myself safe. And they're thinking about that level. So if you look at like Maslow's hierarchy, safety and health are at the bottom of that.
Yeah.
So if you take that concern away, it allows them to focus on those other things like quality and productivity, because now they're not thinking about, okay, I've just got to make sure that I'm actively concentrating and not getting hurt, to, okay, I can't get hurt doing my job. Now I can pay attention to these other things. How do we make things more efficient? How is our quality? How do we fix those problems?
You're an office guy, right?
Office,
no.
field.
No. I mean, like the TV show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think we've talked about it before.
Yeah.
Remember and again, everybody knows I love The Office, so I'm just going to kind of segue into this to kind of prove a point. So remember the episode where the guy comes in, he's like the safety guy, and it ends up kind of turning into a flashback scene, but he drives in and he's on like the Segway, and then he talks to Toby, and Toby's like, I don't want to lie, but I don't want to tell the truth. Like that guy. I feel like, and I don't know exactly what that guy's role was in the show, but I feel like that's you coming in where, and correct me if I'm wrong, where people are like, safety, boring, but then it's like anything with insurance. It's not fun to talk about, it's not fun to do, it's not fun to pay for, but if you don't have it, or when you have it, it translates to peace of mind, which I think anybody, as you start going, like peace of mind, it's very hard to put a price tag on peace of mind depending what level you're in or what level of, risk that you might be involved in. So do you kind of feel like you're maybe not the most fun guy to come in and be like, we're talking about OSHA safety today, but then once it's done, I feel like everybody in the company is like, you know what? I feel like we just are better now. Even though it's kind of like behind the scenes and maybe not flashy stuff, but like you said, it's that base of the pyramid. Am I like similar?
Yeah.
I mean, you're a good dude, so maybe you're not like, people are like, Casey's coming, but it's just like the subject matter, but it may not be the most fun. I mean, you might like it, you might nerd out on it, but it's also one where you're like, it's the thing that you need, and people are like, yep, I just got to do it because I can see the value as to like where it's going to lead our company, even though it's not like the fun, flashy stuff. It's still like I said, it's that base, the foundation of the business.
Yeah, no, it is. And a lot of stuff what we do is we the big part about safety is making it engaging. Like when I go in and do training, I've been through a lot of those trainings myself, and I've had to sit there and have somebody just basically read me regulations. Yeah. And say, here's the things that you're required to do. You've got to follow these things. And I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever had to go through. It's miserable. So I'm like, if we have to go, I don't want to be the guy that goes into a place and like that's the experience somebody has. We try to make sure that what we're doing is engaging. So like if I do a training, it's probably 50% talking about what those requirements and regulations are, and 50% experiences and stories and real life things that have occurred or that I've seen that kind of help to hit it home a little bit more and make it more engaging, because people aren't going to remember CFR 1910-126 and the regulations that follow, but they'll remember hearing a story about the guy who was working on a forklift and a truck driver drove away with him in the back of the truck. Yeah. They're going to remember that stuff.
Well, I was going to say, people, it's like the stories. It's like people understand, and it's like anything else. Like a lot of, like think about history class back in the day. Most people did fairly well at history because I felt that you were just being told a story and you were just listening to the story and be like, I remember the story. I remember the details of the story. If here's a science or math problem or something, and you're like, my head's spinning and I'm trying to understand it, but I just want someone talk to me. That's why I feel like listening to like audiobooks or podcasts, like you hold that information sometimes easier than if you're just randomly like trying to read it or trying to study something because it's more engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
And that's why they want people like us. There's people like us who will go through and we know the Code of Federal Regulations that OSHA requires. Like we've learned all that stuff and we know that information. We can go and we can regurgitate it to somebody and we can help explain why. But then having that engagement part of like getting them to really understand why it's important and the benefits in that side, that's the real, that can be the harder part.
Are these things now? Obviously, you're working as a from an insurance company perspective. Like when you go into these places, these like when you go do these presentations, these are for potential clients of the overall business, or this is like even just for hire kind of thing.
Potential clients, current clients. So we work with our clients that we have to really help them build out their programs. We also do contract work, so we'll go out and we'll work with ones that aren't currently contracts or aren't current clients. We've got several of those that we work with just offhand. We'll write a contract and say, hey, here's our fees. This is what's going to cost to do this for you, and we'll go in and we'll do that. Any of our clients, we basically it's budgeted right into their insurance. So most of that stuff, depending on what level they're at, that's all going to be just covered and paid for. So we're just a free additional service. Well,
and then also I always look at stuff where if you factor in most decisions, like at least from a business perspective, most of these are businesses, you look at like everybody always looks at the cost, but then I also look at the time and energy perspective. So like someone like you who's done all the dirty work of understanding it, the nuances and little changes, and just brings it to the forefront. Like I would look at that and say, I don't have to learn it, like, which is good. I don't have time. I don't want to learn it. It's not my thing. Learn it. Tell me about it and give me your like same in my business. Like you can go put a sign up. You will probably sell your home. Are you selling it for the most amount possible, the least hassle, time, money, and energy? Are you getting that? I can pretty much emphatically say no, but they're like, I sold my house. I'm like, great, you sold your house, awesome. But selling your house at the maximum you can get is, it's different. Same thing I think with this. It's like you can figure out and hack your way through some of this, but then I would probably say like, if that took you how many, tens or hundreds of hours to figure out, I'm sure that time was better well spent. More, like your area of like, expertise versus doing what your area of expertise is. Like for you, you're fishing. Go in and be like, done.
Yeah, our goal really is to help, be able to go in and work with our clients to allow them to do the business that they're in. If you've got a manufacturing company, we want to be able to go in, help them organize how they're doing their safety. Help them figure out, hey, where are your real risks? Let's help solve those and reduce the risk of something occurring there. We can move down that list and find the stuff that's lower risk and figure those out too. But we want to get rid of the biggest risks, help eliminate those, and help you focus on what your business does.
What? How many are you in a company typically for a day, a week, a couple weeks? Like,
it depends. It's really hard because a lot of times, every business is going to kind of be its own thing. That's and working with my advisors, I think we've all kind of figured that out. It's like starting a new job. It's like starting as a new safety person every time you go into a new client, because you really got to kind of figure out, okay, let's take an assessment and figure out where they're at. Once you know where they're at and what level they're at, then you can start figuring out, okay, what is it they're going to need to get to this next level? So I've gone into places where I'm like, okay, let's take a look at, your some of the simple stuff, SDS sheets. So if you've got chemicals on site, you've got to have an SDS for them. I'm like, let's look through your SDS library. And they're like, our what? Like, okay, now we know we're starting like at the basement foundation level, and we've got a whole lot of work that we're going to have to build on that. And we have other ones where you go in and by the time you walk out, you're like, these guys have their stuff together. We're going to be able to help them move up, but it's moving from an A- to an A versus moving from a D- to hopefully a C and then into an A. So it's going to vary between clients.
And again, when you come in, this is like you're on their team. You're not coming in and audit. You're not someone from OSHA coming in and you're, like you said, you're doing mock evaluations, but the evaluations don't carry any negative weight. It's more of like, it's like again, I'll go back to real estate terms. It's like a pre-inspection. It's like we're doing all the stuff to make sure fix it. So when the real deal comes, we're good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We want to go in and
be
be that
preventative.
Yeah. And I think a lot of our clients appreciate that fact that, we're going in to help them avoid that. So we don't want OSHA to show up and go through and just pick them apart. We want to do that first before any of that happens. We get out ahead of that stuff. Make sure that when OSHA does show up, they're going to have to dig to try and find something wrong.
Is OSHA kind of like a drug test? They just kind of pop up with the cup and say, "Hey, pee in the cup," kind of deal.
So not really.
Is there warning before OSHA shows up?
No.
Okay,
normally
so they can just knock up
not.
Like, here we are.
They can just show up if they want to.
Okay.
They have kind of a hierarchy of how they organize their inspections. And it really kind of like during COVID, a lot of that dropped off. I mean, the OSHA inspections actually went from around 40, I want to say it was like 40,000 to like 20,000 during COVID. Like it literally cut their number of inspections in half.
Just because of availability, or just because people weren't at the office, or weren't at
a lot of everything.
Yeah.
Some of them places just weren't running. OSHA investigators were still subject to all the federal regulations for COVID, so like they had to limit their exposure, so they couldn't be on sites a lot of times. But yeah, they have a pretty rigid structure of how they investigate. Like they're going to prioritize again. They're doing that same thing. They're taking the highest risk stuff. So, if they've got fatality and significant injuries, those are the ones that are like their number one thing to look at. After that, it's going to be like repeat offenders, places that have had those injuries, had those things happen, and they're known to not necessarily fix them. A big one that's been recent was, I don't like calling out businesses, but I know like Dollar General's been in the news a lot lately. Amazon warehouses as well. Because they're just repeating the same things that are going wrong over and over again, and they're obviously not getting fixed. So they're going to try and investigate those places and really take a good look at them before they go and just show up at every mom and pop shop.
How often, like if you go in and say do an audit with a client or whatever, like how often do you have to go in? Is it like, are most of these to kind of go in, do your thing, kind of monitor from a distance? Or like how often do you have to go in the field and be like, hey, I got to check, these are people I got to check like once a quarter, once a year? Or is there like an every 3-year cycle where like, they're probably good. They really can't screw this up unless they're like really delinquent, and then you kind of come in, or
So usually what we do is we actually set up a plan at the beginning of each year. Mm-hmm. So when they're going through the renewal process to renew their insurance for each year, we'll go in and we'll basically create what we call a focus plan with them, and we say, hey, we know where your issues are this year. Let's take a look at what the big problems are, and let's prioritize what we want to do. So here's the 3 or 4 things that we want to make sure get done this year. Here's the support we can give you. Here's where our risk management team is going to work with you. So they're the ones that kind of look at the workers' comp side of stuff. And then we say, okay, and then there's probably activities that you guys are going to do internally. What are your things that you want to do internally? So we kind of set up those 3 areas. How are we going to help? How's our risk management team going to help? And what are you going to do for yourselves? And then we basically go through and we use that as kind of our deliverables for the year. And we want to get through those. We'll make sure we're in pretty frequent contact with most of our clients. We're also pretty much always available. They can email us when they have needs. Our big thing though is we want to make sure they're engaged in the process. And that can be the hurdle to overcome a lot of times. Some of them don't have that mentality of, hey, I want to invest the time and money in this and make sure things are right. And so sometimes we're kind of like, feels like we're kicking down doors to try and get inside a place to be like, hey, listen, we're here to help.
Yeah.
But it's hard when you're, pounding on their door and being like, hey, we want to help you. To really get them to understand, like, that's what we're there for. We're here as that preventative side.
Regarding like safety training and stuff, how quickly does things evolve? Like, because obviously business evolves in general, but like most safety stuff, is it mostly physical? Like you get the physical, like obviously you said like some documentation and stuff like that, but does any of it have to do ever with like technology increases, or is it more of like technology from maybe machines or, kind of an assembly line or something like that?
Yeah, a lot of it's going to depend, in the field. So like I've been a huge person dealing, one of the big ones that's kind of come to the forefront is ergonomics. So making sure that people have, aren't putting themselves at risk by strains, sprains, overexertion and those things. That was
biomechanical positions. Like,
so going in and doing that, and there is no OSHA regulation for that. There's no standard that says, hey, you have to do these things in order to make sure people are using proper ergonomic setups. There's some guidance, but there's nothing that's legally binding to any organization. At the same time, it's something where OSHA can go in and they use what they call the general duty clause, which is that you are, as an employer, required to make sure people have a safe place to work. So if you're making people be in really awkward position and lift really heavy stuff all the time, they can still cite you for that. So it's an ergonomic issue, and there's not an ergonomics program. but they'll cite you along those lines because you're putting people at risk.
Could that even be, I mean, simply like you're on some type of an assembly line, you stand majority of the day, like even just putting mats underneath where you're like, just from instead of standing on concrete, you're standing on like, you do dishes or something, they have like the foam mats.
Yep.
Could it even be down as simple as that?
Yeah, sometimes it's little things like that.
Yeah.
But I'd say that the ergonomics, though, is one of those big ones where I think there's a lot of that technology coming out now. So, I mean, your exoskeletons and some of the stuff that's really cool that's coming out that are real high end of the tech forefront. But you've got simple stuff like a anti-fatigue mat that you stand on. Yeah. And anywhere in between those two things are 25, 30, 300 or 1,000 other methods to be able to help reduce that risk. So, we can help figure out what some of those are. And that's kind of our side of it. We're not asking our clients to go out and be like, hey, you've got an ergonomic problem with this person doing this job. Go fix it. We're going to see that problem and be like, hey, there's an issue here. Let's see what we can find that can help you resolve that.
So there is creativity on your part where it's like, let me try to brainstorm and figure this out.
I always kind of joke that about 85% of being a health and safety professional is knowing how to effectively use Google.
Yeah.
That's
so we had this happens like in our business because a lot of it's technology driven and there's different things. People are like, well, how do I do that? Like YouTube and Google. You're asking me, I'm like, that's literally where I go. That's how I've probably educated myself 99% of my career is Google and YouTube. Mm-hmm. You talk to people and stuff and you learn from that. But I mean, I Google and YouTube so many things. Yeah. Like YouTube is actually I think when you go through like apps and stuff, it's probably the app I use the most because I'll just sit there and like watch videos to learn stuff. And it doesn't mean learn stuff like, hey, learn how to fix something around the house, but it's like something in business, like learn a concept, like learn an ad structure, learn whether it's a sales structure, learn an efficiency structure. Like I will watch hours of video, understand it, and then start playing with it and applying it, and be like, okay, I know how to do this. But free education.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, and that's really a lot of what we do. We do that research on the back end for our clients to help figure out what's the way to fix this problem.
Yeah. What's your favorite part of all this? Like, what gets you kind of I want to say up out of bed, but you said you find a passion behind safety. Like, what's the kind of the main thing that just North Star for you?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think one of my things with my last company and even now is that, I want to make sure that anyone that I work with or that I interact with goes home to be able to do the things that they love to do. Mm-hmm. I always used to have a joke in my last company, and I said, listen, we made rolled roofing product. And I would joke, and I would start off most meetings. I'm like, listen, no one here is passionate about rolled roofing products. Yeah. You're here because it's a job that helps you pay bills and helps you be able to do the things that you enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. Why would you put yourself at risk for something you're not passionate about? Why would you want to not be able to do those things that you like to do because we got an extra pallet of material off the end of the production line? Yeah. It doesn't make sense. So for me, that's, being able to carry that out to a much broader community, in a ton of different places. That's really what I enjoy.
In a variety of industries, right?
And a ton of different industries. Yeah. I was, when I first started this role, it was great because it was every day was like being in a real life episode of How It's Made. Because I show up at a manufacturing facility and they're like, all right, let's go through and walk you through our entire process. So I get to go into these buildings that like most people don't get to go inside, see how things are made like right up front, talk to the guys that are making it, figuring those things out. So, I mean, that's always awesome, especially like, we carry some craft breweries and some distillers. So those are always fun. Yeah. Because, there's also, occasionally some, hey, we'll send you home with a sample.
Shucks. I guess I'll bring it.
Yeah. Lake Champlain chocolate's real rough to go there and have them be like, here's a bunch of seconds, bring them home. Like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, when you start going and learning, and I think you kind of put this in, but you're like a learning guy. You like learning stuff.
Yeah.
So and I know we'll kind of joke about this, but man of much knowledge, master of very little of it. So I heard this once. It was phrased as, what do they call it? Like cocktail knowledge. Mm-hmm. Like if you were at a cocktail party, you could pretty much talk to anybody about anything. I would consider myself like on that level. Mm-hmm. Where I could probably hang in a conversation, unless it's like cars or something. I'm terrible with cars. But like I really am. Someone was talking to me today about it, and I'm like, I don't know that style of car. I know the brand of car. That's about as much as I know. But there's certain things I know very little about, but very broad. So not like deep. I know only, if you had said how many things do you know like at a very deep level, I can count on my hand. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, true for most people.
Yeah.
But so kind of explain that. Like, what's your, I guess, knowledge base? Like, where'd that come from? Like, love. Like, I would say you love learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to know. I want to know. I want to know everything about everything.
Yeah.
But I know that's not possible. So I want to know something about everything. And actually, and it's funny because you bring that up. And I actually I was reading an article not too long ago, which, like speaking of wanting to learn and wanting to kind of understand how how your brain functions and like how mine functions. And
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I was diagnosed years ago with severe ADD. But there's several different types of attention deficit disorder. And reading this article was talking a lot about how, most people, the way they function is that they want to do something and get it completed. And when you get that task completed or that project or whatever it is, that's when you get the dopamine release from that. So you get something out of it. So your body gets that dopamine, the kick from getting that thing done. Some people that have severe ADD, we get that dopamine release when we've learned, what we feel is a really good amount of information about that project. So we may not finish it, but we've learned a ton about it. And once we've learned that limit, like that amount, we already get that dopamine release. So finishing the project doesn't really have a benefit because of the fact that we've already got the dopamine, we've already got the kick out of it, and pursuing it further isn't really going to do much for me. So it was really kind of interesting reading this article about that because I was like, that explains a lot. Yeah. That's why I have 847 projects that are 75% complete, because I learned everything I could about that thing by doing this project. And it got to a point where I'm like, okay, I feel competent in this project. I got my release and I moved on to the next thing.
How, I feel like I've never been like diagnosed with ADHD or anything like that. I'm sure I have a level of it, or ADD, not ADHD. You know what I mean? ADD, attention deficit disorder. I feel like I am probably in that, but like when you try to learn something, how long do you stick with something before you feel like you jump off the ship, like into something different?
And that's a good question. And a lot of it is going to be
like 6 months to 3 years kind of thing.
I think a lot of it's going to depend on how much you really need to learn about something to get that release. Mm-hmm. So, there's some stuff where I know that I've only learned a little bit about it, so I'm going to continue to try and understand it more thoroughly. But I'm probably not going to be the person who's going to go through to that level of research and understanding of it to perfect my knowledge on it. Like that's just, I don't get as much of a benefit from that. Mm-hmm. I would, because in the long run, I'm going to be able to be proficient at that thing.
So you want to get up to like 80, 90%, but don't want to spend, because as we know, like you can get to 80, 90%, probably 20% of the effort, and 80% of the effort is going to get you marginally better.
Exactly.
I mean, very deep knowledge, but marginally better overall.
Yeah. You can get to that 80% level fairly easily, mm-hmm. but if you want to get to 95, there's a ton more investment.
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm probably, depending on what it is, I've done, I don't even know how many hobbies I've had.
We're going to read them off?
Yeah. Exactly.
We're going to dive into all of them. We got golf, grilling, Philadelphia Eagles, Star Wars, ordained duteous priest. Dudist priest?
Dudist, yeah.
Dudist. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Craft beer, brewing, autograph collecting, music, guitar, not having kids. Like we got a whole, I don't know if that's a hobby. That's probably just a topic. But
yeah.
Yeah, like I would say knowing you, guitar, I knew that. Brewing, I knew that. Music, I knew that. Golf, I knew that. Begrudgingly, Philadelphia Eagles, unfortunately, I knew that. But I mean, so like most of these things, when you kind of pick at it and need, like golf requires knowledge, grilling requires knowledge, craft beer, and then you start going like music or autograph collecting, guitar, like those require time. Philadelphia Eagles, I don't know if that requires a lot of time. I mean, obviously it's like fandom, but it's not like. It's not like you learned how to be a fan, but you put hours of watching or understanding or watching, stats and players and things. Yeah. But, like, kind of breaking all those down, like you still play golf, I'm assuming still grill, mm-hmm. You obviously still enjoy craft beer, things like that. Like at what point do you like, okay, I put a lot of time and effort into learning about, let's say, grilling, and now you're like, I'm proficient at grilling. My skills aren't up to when I was like very in it, but they're still pretty damn good. Mm-hmm. So I mean, is that kind of true for a lot of these things?
Yeah, I think, and and it's funny because I think a lot of the ones that I've listed on there are ones that there's also consistent rewards for. I mean, drinking craft beer has a reward every time I do it.
Instant.
Instantaneously,
Yes.
it's just everything's better.
Yeah.
Grilling, having good food.
Yeah.
There's always a reward at the end of it.
Yeah.
Golf, there's never a reward for golf.
No, you bash your head into the wall.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's meaningless. It's a horrible thing.
There's a massive dopamine effect, though. You flush a ball or make a good putt or hit one close.
Yeah.
It's weird, but people talk about this in golf. Like, you go in and you shoot well and you birdie or par the last hole, and you've had a crap round. All of a sudden, you're like, you know what? I'm ready to tee it up tomorrow.
Yeah.
But you shot 100. But I'm like, I don't care. Bird's
Doesn't
the last
matter.
hole.
Yep. Doesn't even matter.
Hit a beautiful drive down the center of the fairway.
Yep.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
It's crazy how simple, minded people are when they play golf.
Yeah,
Like,
you will chase that feeling for the rest of your life.
yeah, it doesn't go away.
Yeah. No, and I think there's some of those that are like, for me, I still get that reward, I think, from those things. And other stuff, I get proficient at it. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I have friends that do, woodworking.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating and it's interesting. And I've learned a lot about it, but it's not something that I could be like, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to open my own wood shop and do this. It just, for me, the reward to that would be so limited that it wouldn't really be worth the investment.
Right now, I'm going to say, which hobbies, interests are you up to, currently right now, if I looked at your day-to-day, week or whatever, that you would say, I'm doing this right now, actively? Because it's not a lot. You typically would have one main interest, maybe two. It's usually small.
Yeah. I would say right now, probably, golf. That's always been there. I mean, I've been playing since I was 4 years old. So, that's going to be always been there. Guitar and music, unfortunately, those have kind of fallen off. Those are ones that I think I did a lot of that because there was the interaction with other people, and then other people got tied up in other things, and that kind of went away. So, brewing, that's one that I'm actually trying to get back into now.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to that. Start to hone that one in because, again, great rewards from that one if you can brew your own beer and it's really good.
But it's
awesome.
Science too, so it's the learning.
Yeah. There's a ton of stuff to learn there, and that's the thing is that I don't feel like I haven't got that full release from that. I haven't got that dopamine from everything I can learn about brewing beer. There's still a lot there. So there's some meat on that bone. Grilling, definitely. Still, I do that regularly. Always trying to figure out how to make things a little bit better. How to perfectly get that beautiful reverse seared steak. That's always got to just keep trying until you get it right. I've got it right every time pretty much, but I'm still going to keep trying to get it a little better.
Are you a grill, smoker, blacktop? What are you?
Everything. So I actually it's a master built.
Okay.
So it's actually it's kind of one of those weird chimney grills, so you can grill it, you can smoke on it, you can do whatever you want with it.
Which one? It looks like this?
Let's see. Yep. The 800 one is the one that I have. Yep. So that's the size up, but yeah, it's pretty much the same exact thing. So you basically dump a bunch of charcoal on the side.
Right here?
And I mean, I did.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And that big chimney on the side.
Yep.
And I actually did. So we have our annual. So we kind of claim July 4th, myself and my girlfriend, as being kind of our party. So we do our annual meat explosion and fireworks extravaganza.
Right at the house?
At our house, yep.
Nice.
Yep. So I'll have to make sure you get your invite for next year.
That's
so
I'm gonna have a beer.
Yeah, we've
watch
been,
some fireworks.
Yeah, exactly. We've been slowly growing it over. It's our one child friendly party of the year. So we have a fenced in backyard, so they can't run away. But yeah, I mean, we do. So I think last year I did 7 racks of ribs. And those were all day long. Started those at about 11 o'clock in the morning.
Do you use one of those?
Nope. Just
how do you think that would be right there?
Oh, the electric smokers. I don't know. I haven't tried the master built on that side. The one that I have actually does everything I need it to do. So.
I mean, obviously this looks like it's foolproof. You can't mess this up.
And that's what I like about mine. I mean, it's hard to.
Sorry, I totally went off track there. But
oh no, it's all good. Yeah, mine, and it's great because it's all electric. You plug it in. I basically plug it in and I set a temperature. So if I want to do my ribs, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna set this at 230, and it will maintain that temperature for me all day. So I don't have to mess with anything. I just go back. I flip them when I need to, wrap them when I want to, do all that stuff. So we did the 7 racks of ribs, and then I did 12 pounds of Wagyu steak.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's legit. Okay.
Yeah. We also did, I think, like 100 wings. So one of my other friends came over and we had like 3.
Just deep fried them?
No, we actually used 3 air fryers. So
Oh, really?
We had 3
Okay.
air fryers going, trying, on 3 different circuits in the house, so we didn't blow anything.
That's yeah.
But yeah, I had 3 air fryers going for just chicken wings beforehand to kind of, whet everyone's appetite a little bit. But yeah, we did the, that was like an all-day project, just being at the grill.
Are you? I was gonna say regarding like prepping, like seasoning, marinating, things like that. Like what level do you get in on that? Are you like is that part of the things you like doing? Because that's where most of the flavor is. I mean, the flavor, and then obviously I had to cook it.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, like I think I started out that way, and I found a couple of recipes that I'm just like
The go-to.
that's the one.
Yeah.
I mean ribs were just plain yellow mustard, and I use I think it's actually like this year I used it from a different company. I used it from what is it? It's one of the markets over in Vermont. They make their own spices, and it's basically a maple barbecue.
My well, this was 4th of July a few years back. We had this big 4th of July party. I go to a friend's family's camp, and it was a blast. And there was like 7 grills there, and my favorite thing they made was same thing. Like every night, there's some type of grilling going on, and there's I think there was a smoker, there was like charcoal grills, there was just propane grills, but there was a ton. Like you cook anything and everything. So chicken thighs, which I absolutely love, it was chicken thighs, and they had like the Lowry rub on it. I mean, this is like I don't think it's like a specific type of Lowry rub that you just can't find. Like it's I don't know exactly which one it was, but they're always like you can't find these in stores. So you got to like either order them or they're only at like these weird spots. They put those on. They put it in like one of the charcoal like kind of circular kind of grills. Put it to the side, low and slow, just let it cook. That was the greatest chicken thighs I've ever had in my life. And it was like you could just sit there and eat those, and you're like to the point like I'm full, but I'm gonna have 3 more.
Yeah,
and because it's crack, it's great. But when you start seeing like the prep behind it and just kind of like the process behind it versus like, hey, I'm just gonna throw it on, quick, move it in. There's a big difference between what you get with flavors.
Oh yeah,
how you cook. I grew up having steak cooked well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I know. No, I'll come full circle. So my parents were never like really big grillers or things like that, and so like everything was just cooked well. So I grew up, I'm like, whatever. But it's the only thing I ever knew. I got up, I was like 21, I think it was. I went to my first ever real estate conference. I go down, I just got into real estate. Some buddies my dad knew, was sitting with them. This one guy, he's great, and older guy, and he leans over and he kind of like took me under his wing. And I'd like never been to like a fancy steakhouse, and he was like, this is pretty cool. And he's like, okay, so what should I get? First time I ever had a Cosmo too. Like, I mean, this was like bougie. I was definitely out of my league. I was like, I'll take a blue light, but no, we're gonna have Cosmo. So it was good. But we ended up sitting there, and he's like, I'm like, what steak? He's like, well, he's pointing out some different things. I forgot the cut of steak I got. He goes, we had wine and all this. It was great. He goes, get a medium rare. Medium rare, like that's not. Be at least medium well. I should say well. It was like medium, medium well. And he's like, no, medium rare. And I'm like, really? He goes, and kind of explained why you don't get anything more than at least medium. Like, but
yeah.
So since that day, I have never ordered a steak less than medium or more than medium rare. Like I like medium. Like if they overcook it, whatever, I'll eat it. I've never gone over medium rare. It's always medium rare. It is the greatest way to have a steak.
Yeah.
Do you have rare steak or is it always medium rare?
I go so we
because you're not a medium guy, I could tell.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, there's no way Casey's having a medium steak.
I always kind of look at the what's his name? The comedian was always like, yeah, just I'll cut off what I want, I'll ride the rest home.
Yeah.
Like Dennis Leary, I think that was his thing was just bring the cow out here, I'll cut off what I want, and I'll ride the rest home. No, I think I'm medium rare. So usually like when I do it, I get it. So I do the reverse sear method.
Okay.
So I do like a low and slow at the beginning, get it up to like 115.
Yep.
Take them off, wrap them, crank the grill up to like 700 degrees. Let it get really nice and hot. And then just you put them on there for like a minute and a half on each side. It gets them to like 130, 131. Yep. Pull them off. And the
just let them kind of post cook a little bit too.
And honestly, you don't even have that's the nice part about the reverse sear is that you've already cooked the inside. Mm-hmm. So like you don't necessarily even have to let them rest. What
do you do the before you sear them down? What would you put it on? Like at how long at what temperature?
Probably usually I put it at like 225. Mm-hmm. Leave it on there for, it's probably takes about 12 to 14 minutes.
Okay.
To get them to like that 115. Depends on the temperature you're starting with. Usually I try and get them to room temperature and then put them on the grill. So usually about 12 minutes or so, 6 minutes aside. And
we're talking about like 3/4 inch kind of thing.
Yeah, probably about an inch.
Yeah.
Usually what I'll do is I'll actually order the coulette cut. So
Okay.
it's like they're 3 pounds, and I can get you. And honestly, I'll tell you right now, you want good steak, Vermont Wagyu over in Vermont, you can get a 3 pound coulette of Wagyu steak for $72.
Wow.
And the coulette is one of the most like underrated cuts.
How do you spell that?
Coulette. So it's also commonly known as the picanha. So if you ever go to like a Brazilian steakhouse, they're the ones that they cut. They kind of like grill it like in a C shape. They like fold it in half and then grill it that way. If you get like
this right here.
Yep. So that's how they'll cut them there. But they are like just literally like there's this nice huge big piece of fat on the side and usually just like perfect marbling in them.
So it's on the loin?
Yep.
Loin part? Yeah.
Yep. So it's like part of the top loin that doesn't really get used as well. But it's also like one of the cheapest cuts of steak you can find. But it's so
The price you pay versus what you get
is incredible.
Yeah, ratio's great.
Yeah, I actually got one not too long ago. We were just at Price Chopper, and I was like, we didn't have any Wagyu in the freezer, so I'm like, well, we'll just grab a couple. And they didn't have any in the cooler, so I asked the butcher. I was like, hey, do you guys have any coulette? And he's like, let me go take a look. When he comes out, he's like, I don't have any right now, but I can cut some. He's like, how many do you want? And I'm like, we just need a couple. And so he comes out. And he walks out and he brings these 2 coulettes out, and I'm just like, they looked like Wagyu. And he, like, as the butcher, he was like, I have never seen meat here that looks like this. He was like, so I only have 2 packages of these. Do you want them both? And I'm like, yes, we do. And I looked at him and he was like, there's 2 more. We're taking them home. Like, yeah, I don't blame you.
Oh, he took them home.
Oh, yeah. Him and the other guy that cut him, they actually took the other 2 home because they
funny.
were just like, dude, we're not.
Yeah.
These are ours now.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Steak's so good.
But it's such a wonderful, like, good tender cut.
So look, and so you can get that local too, or you said Vermont. Vermont has the best, but you can get them local.
Well, Vermont Wagyu, because then you're getting the Wagyu cut or the Wagyu steak.
And Wagyu that's Japanese, right? And they
It is. It's a breed. So there's a breed for it, and then like I think it's all Kobe is Wagyu, but not all Wagyu's Kobe beef. And you can get like Australian, you can get American Wagyu. It's from a certain
Isn't like
line.
Japanese Wagyu like very rare and very expensive?
That's the stuff like that. If you can get like it's like A5 Wagyu
Yes,
is like the stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And like that's gonna run you. I think like Costco has it, and like 2 little like 4-ounce New York strips are like $100.
Yeah,
and that's
insane.
at Costco, which is like ridiculous pricing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So what is Wagyu? It's the type of. It's a type of
it's the
cow.
The cow. Yeah.
So Wagyu cow.
Yeah, I think it's the actual. I'm fairly certain. I'm again one of those places where I haven't done my research on that end of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure they're a breed.
So have you had
It's a
Wagyu
line.
A5?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I've ever had it. I just know it's like up there.
I had it when I was in Los Angeles, and it kind of ruined me.
Because it was so good.
Yeah, like that's why like it's so hard to go to like a grocery store now and like buy steak.
Yeah, like regular Japanese Wagyu cattle.
Yeah. When you've had something that's that good, it's hard to just go and be like, oh, I'm just gonna get this, this New York strip from the local grocery store and go bring this home and grill it and really expect it to be the same.
So collective name for 4 principal Japanese breeds of beef cattle. Like, do you know what crossbreeding early 20th century? So it's just purely whatever the combo was when these things bred. It's just the meat or whatever makes them up is
It's
better.
just incredibly marbled. Like that fat content in the muscle is just incredibly high.
So is Wagyu your favorite type of meat?
Probably, yeah.
Do you know what the different like A5 versus what anything else would be rated?
It's just I don't know what the other rating numbers are. I know it's just it's a matter of the quality and level of marbling that you see in that steak. Yeah.
Are you more of like a marble kind of steak guy?
Yeah, I want it nice and marble.
Like I'm a bone and ribeye guy. Like,
yeah,
I
don't, and and that's a good. It's a decent cut.
Yeah.
I think the only thing you find is that you're not going to get. I mean, in all reality, in steak, the fat's where the flavor is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like if you got a piece of steak, like,
Like I don't like fillets. They're too lean. They're good, but they're not like.
Yeah, for me,
I'm always going to go ribeye.
It's really tender muscle, but there's no fat to carry the flavor.
Correct. Yep.
So I'm not a big fan of a fillet.
Especially when you get like that little bit of like that crisp on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just a little bit of char on there, and you start eating it. It's like just it's so good.
Yeah. And they'll tell you, I mean, if you get good steak, like if it's got that good marbling, like a lot of places you go in, like if you're going to cook in like cast iron, you can go through and you're putting a bunch of butter and stuff in. If you get really, really good marbled steak, you don't even need the butter.
Yeah.
It cooks itself.
I that's one thing I've learned how to do, and I do it more in the winter because in the summer I like going out on the grill when it's too cold. I usually take a big cast iron, or like a skillet, cast iron, and it depends. A lot of times I'll throw in like just plain butter is probably the best. I've done like avocado oil and stuff too, but I usually just do plain butter. And throw in the butter, and then I usually put in like like rosemary. You might put in some like garlic cloves or whatever.
Yep.
And I'm trying to think if anything else. I think that's it. Maybe just some salt and pepper prior to put it on. Put it in, sear it, and just kind of let it like really smoke up, and just like probably. I usually flip it a couple times just to like so it's not overheating or overcooking, but. I'd probably say it's on there for 4 to 5 minutes tops, just sear kind of deal, like rotate every minute, pull it off, and just kind of let the juices kind of flow and let it cook a little bit post, and then it's amazing.
Yeah, salt, pepper, garlic, man.
Yeah.
If you need more than that on your steak, you got the wrong steak.
Well, and that's usually my go-to. And sometimes I don't even put the garlic on. I like garlic, but sometimes I want to just taste the flavor. And sometimes I find garlic, again, I'm not a perfect chef by any means, so I know I butchered a lot, so I'm probably putting the wrong amount, but sometimes I feel like a little bit of garlic will take away from the flavor, especially if you have a good flavored steak. I'm like, I just want salt and pepper, like I said, a little bit of butter, maybe just kind of, just make it that much better. And I find that I'm pretty satisfied with that. Like, and I get excited when I make those. Again, I'm not a chef by any means, but I do find it fascinating when you're like cooking a meal. There's something about it, and you can see start to finish the whole process. There's something about just seeing that end result. I mean, and then you can sit there and have like a glass of wine or a beer while you're doing it, but it becomes kind of like you don't even have to be with anybody like grilling. Just like by myself, just put some music on and just kind of cook and watch and just kind of chill and just see the whole thing just turn into something good and then get to eat it. Like you said, instant gratification is right there.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's a fun thing.
And that's why I think there's one of the other reasons I like that coulette is, I mean, you're getting basically a 3-pound chunk of meat.
Yeah.
So you kind of have a little more interaction with it than just going and getting a pre-cut steak from the store. Like now you've got to go through, you've got to do a little bit of trimming. You've actually got to cut like, how wide, how big of, how thick of a steak do you want? You can make those decisions and cut it the way you want to do it. So
what's a proper way, or at least the way that you know how to like trim a steak? What would you look for? Is there certain spots you want to cut it? Certain things you want to cut out?
If it's got like too much of like a fat cap on it, like where that real thick fat is, like
it's just never gonna
I'll
cook.
trim that down to like, maybe a half an inch is like as a good like cap on it, and then just the marbling inside the meat's the other big part. As long as it's got good marbling and it's not like just a huge chunk of like gristle or fat on there, anything like that I'm cutting off. It's gone. I don't want that. I want the steak to taste like something. So like something like this, like you would cut this a little bit. No, I'd leave that in
You'd
there.
Leave that, but this piece you might cut a little bit.
Yeah, I might trim a little off the end of that.
Yeah,
and depending on on how good the quality of the butcher is, are they leaving any like gristle, or are they leaving any tendon or anything like that? Make sure that stuff's not on there because no one wants that.
Yeah. Wow. Marble score. Yeah, like I'd love like right here.
Yeah, that
might be a little too much. That's not enough. You need.
Yeah,
those look great.
No, you gotta have really good marbling. That is the key to a good steak.
Do you pair stuff like? Are you a wine guy with steak? Do you like wine?
I'm not really. I've never been much of a wine guy.
No. Okay.
Here and there, depending on the situation, I might have a glass of wine, but it's not.
Can you drink and eat? And what I mean by drink and eat, like, can you eat and then like your drink is a beer?
Yeah.
So like as long as I can remember, if I have something to eat, if you said, listen, we're going to have a beer right now, we're going to eat, as soon as the food comes out, I'll drink a beer before the meal. I love it. Mm-hmm. As soon as the meal comes out, I will not touch that beer. It fills me up. I don't like the taste of it with the food. I'll drink water. Mm-hmm. But the only drink that I can have is wine an alcoholic drink would be wine with any kind of meal. It doesn't steak, fish, whatever. I don't like mixed drinks. I don't like bourbons or scotches or beers. I can do wine with food, and that's the only thing that I can pair. Just because I don't know if it's I don't know what it is about wine, if it's just smoother or maybe just less carbonation or whatever that might be, but I can't do beer. And usually when I'm done the meal, to go back to beer is hard too because you're full. So I'm like, I could sip wine, I could have maybe a mixed drink after type thing, or a cocktail, but it's very hard for me to have. Beer fills me up a lot. So I can drink beer, and as soon as I eat, I'm like, you know what, I'm good. I don't need more beer. Yeah. Because it's just, and I've always been like that, and I've tried it before. I'm like, I think if we were having dinner right now or having a meal, we had beer, I guarantee you I'd be drinking out of this, and this would have the same amount in it when I'm done. And I'd be like, it's warm. And like, I don't know.
No, I think, and I mean, honestly, and you can do a lot of the same stuff with beer that you can do with wine. You can get the right beers
cooking?
to like pair like with a certain type of food.
Have you cooked with beer too?
Oh yeah. I've cooked with beer in the past. Not as much anymore. I feel like I have better purposes for my beer. Yeah. Like drinking it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can definitely cook with it. I think I did. Trying to think what kind I used. I used a certain kind when we did Thanksgiving turkey. I actually used like a half a beer with the turkey.
Yeah, just like let it sit and pull the flavor out. Yeah.
Yep. Not like a full on like beer can turkey, but that's a little less bougie than I want to be. But going through and just doing a little bit of beer in there just to get a little more flavor. But no, I mean, like there's I've got probably 250, 300 bottles of beer and cans of beer of like stouts and porters and stuff that are actually I have a cellar that they're just aging in, that they're just sitting there for a while until they.
How long does beer stay good for?
It depends on the type of beer.
But like if you're trying to age, because I know like some beer I get it, I'm like,
IPA.
3 months later, I'm like, ugh, throw this stuff out.
IPA, drink it fresh.
Yeah,
you got to do that. Once you usually get up over like 11%, even like some of the IPAs. So like technically like Dogfish 120 is an IPA. It's really more of a barley wine, like it's a different range. But you can let those age. And honestly, like I've had people that have got like that 120 and they're like, oh my God, I can't drink this. And I'm like, yeah, not when it's new. Like you let that sit in a cellar for 3 years and it's going to be delicious. But yeah, I've got probably, I don't even know how many bottles downstairs that are just sitting there, and I'll go out and I'll find a good one for, if I'm going to have a steak, be like, all right, let's find a good beer to drink with this.
So you will buy it with the intention of letting it sit for years?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I have my beer fridge, my cold beer fridge, which is like for the IPAs and that stuff that's out in the garage. That one's always full. But then I have, which makes it easy because then that way I don't feel like I'm, I have to dig into the cellar because I've got fresh beer right there that I have to drink fresh. So it encourages the aging process for that stuff when I find it.
So I didn't know this. So I told you about Jen. Like Jen knows more about beer than me, and then other people that she knows and know more beer. And so one day we were at this place and she's like grabbing the beer. I was like, great. She goes, we don't have a cooler, do we? I'm like, it's fine. It's cold. Like, just bring it. We'll like drink it, but we were going to save it for later kind of thing. She goes like, no, you want to have it like cold to cold. And I'm dumb. I'm like, just throw it in the car. Like, it'll be fine. I'll throw it in the fridge tonight. And I didn't realize like you're not really supposed to do that. You're supposed to try to keep it cold all the time. So like people will go get beer and they'll like have coolers to put the beer in so it never gets warm. Yeah. So do you know the reason behind that? Is just to take the flavor does it really make a difference?
Yeah. So I mean, like the keeping it cold thing. I mean, like I've never really. I mean, I get it and I understand the process behind it because you can lose some of those flavors. Like that's why you'll go. Like if you go to the beer store, some of the IPAs are on a shelf. They're not refrigerated because they weren't cold. But once you get them cold, you don't want them to get warm and then get cold again. Okay. That starts to impact the flavors and that kind of stuff. But and honestly, like for me, even like good double IPAs and stuff like that, like if anything under 34 degrees, you don't taste. So like that's why I was kind of joke like with like Coors Light and those beers, everyone's like, oh, you want a refreshing ice cold beer? And I'm like, yeah, because you can't taste it when it's 33 degrees, which is probably how you want to drink it. Because as soon as it gets warm, it doesn't taste good anymore.
It's like that Busch Light over there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because like that, then now you can taste it and now it's not good. But like an IPA, like you want them to get up into like, you open them cold, pour it in a glass. Like a lot of the glasses you find for like IPAs, they're really thin glass because it allows that, allows them to warm up a little quicker. But you want them like that, 40, 42 degrees is like a good temperature. I mean, you go to Europe, they're not going to serve you cold beer.
So I was going to say, I remember going to some places in Ireland when I was there, and it was same thing. It wasn't like as cold as you would find over here. It was like, it was cold, but it was like
It's cellar temp.
Yeah, it was just above what you would consider room temperature.
Yeah, it's what they consider it cellar temperature,
Yeah.
and that's like for aging beers. It's like 55 degrees is like perfect temp. No light, 55 degrees, they'll be okay.
So the actual brewing process that you've been doing, like what kind of beers are you playing around with? What do you like to? What's kind of like where's your area of focus, I guess, with that?
So when we were doing it, like I said, it's probably been over a year and a half since we brewed. We really kind of just ran all over the map. We were like, hey, what do we want to do next? And we would just figure it out. Mm-hmm. The first one we brewed and the one we brewed the most often was we gave it its own term. So we call it's a CSB. It's a Canadian special bitter. Okay. So English special bitter is like its own style of beer. But ours for some reason, had this weird note. So it kind of tasted a little bit like malt. So like Molson and Labatt have a different, even though they're the same type of beer as most like domestic Americans,
yep.
There's a different flavor for them. And it had that weird kind of like a little bit more malty flavor to them. So, but it had this like caramel note that you find in ESBs. So that was our Canadian special bitter. So we brewed that one. We've done probably 5 or 6 versions of that. And that was actually like really good.
You liked it?
Easy and smooth. It was like 5.7%.
How many runs at that did it take?
Honestly, the funny thing is we got really lucky. I think both myself and my friend Jason, who I brew with, were really, really like borderline OCD on like the science stuff and like and the cleanliness and all that. So like we were like hyper focused on like sanitation. So we've actually we have yet. There's no wood here. I'd knock on something.
Knock on my head, yeah.
Yeah, but we have yet to have a batch that's gone bad on us. So like everyone we've brewed has been at least a quality beer. Like there haven't been any infections or horrible things like that. There's a couple that weren't as good as other ones. But yeah, I mean, we did the ESB, the CSB. We also did. I think the favorite one that I brewed though was we did a breakfast stout, and we actually used. So we used mostly spring water, but we used like I think a half gallon of sap, like actual like straight like sap instead of water. And then we also did.
What would you call it? Breakfast stout?
Yeah, it's a breakfast stout. That one actually came in pretty potent because that one came in I think at like 8.7 or 8.8%, and it was all there. But it was like.
How do you test how much the alcohol is? Like how would you know it came in at that percentage?
So it's you do what's called specific gravity. So basically you measure the specific gravity prior to putting any yeast in. Mm-hmm. So you get whatever the specific gravity is compared to water. And then you measure it once you've actually pitched the yeast and you get to when it's finished brewing, you can take and usually you'll take a few tests in between to make sure like it's going right. And then at the end you get your final specific gravity once it's finished brewing. And the difference between those, there's an equation you figure out, and it'll tell you about like what your alcohol by volume is.
So when you're brewing, say you want to get to let's say a 6, and you want to avoid getting to an 8, do you just stop at 6, or you're like, listen, this still has to brew, and we made a mistake leading up? I know nothing about brewing, so like, do we make a mistake leading up to it, or we should have made a change, weeks or months ago, or is it one where like, no, we can just go, and as soon as we hit the number we want, we just stop the process? Yeah,
you can do that. So you can actually kill the fermentation process if you have to. Normally, it's knowing an idea and like what the viability of the yeast is. How strong that's going to go. How's it going to be? You can usually figure a lot of that stuff out ahead of time before you brew, and then you kind of use that to figure out where you want to be. A lot of what we've done, we've really kind of followed some recipes that we found online and kind of like we've played around with them. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, we try and follow the recipe, so it gives us a fairly good idea on on where we should end up.
So like a breakfast stout, what's the characteristics of that?
So usually they're going to have some nice like coffee notes to it. Okay. Like the one you pulled up, Founders CBS. That's a great beer. Their Canadian breakfast stout, because that's similar to what we did. They actually used some maple syrup in it.
Okay.
Ours we just used sap. We didn't use the actual finished syrup. But they're going to have some coffee notes. So strong coffee, some chocolate, and some caramel in there usually. Usually fairly sweet, really kind of heavy bodied. Mm-hmm. So it's got a real like some thickness to it. But yeah, they're going to have that really roasted malt flavor. There's not going to be a lot of that bitterness. It's going to be more on that malt end, so it's a lot more sweeter than you're going to find like with like IPAs and stuff.
So when you like, if you had to pick a beer, like what kind of beer do you gravitate towards just to drink? Like is it IPA? Do you go into like the breakfast stout?
It depends on the time of year.
Okay,
I think
so you're a
during,
seasonal guy.
Yeah, during the summer, if I'm going to be outside all day, I'm probably going to go with something nice and light, like a lager. If I'm going to be, having a couple beers and just relaxing, I'll probably go with like a decent IPA. Once you get in towards like fall time, still to this day, one of my favorites is still Sam Adams Oktoberfest.
Love it.
Every single year, have
Yeah.
to buy it and see what it tastes like that year.
Yeah.
But like that style, like Marzen, those are always great. Once I get into winter,
Stouts.
move into the stouts, the barley wines, the porters, the real heavy kind of, potent beers.
Yeah.
And then, they kind of joke they're like a winter warmer. It's a perfect beer for it.
Well, I was gonna say it's funny how things like again you mentioned wine. Like I love red wine. If I had to pick one kind of wine, it's red versus white. I mean, obviously you can go down like cabs and things inside, but if I go red and white, I'm typically red. Summer though, I want white. Like like it's temperature though. It's like I want to chill like white wine. I want to have it. Anything after probably Labor Day ish, then it's like it's starting to get a little chill. I want red wine with steak or whatever, or even just pair it up with different meals where. And I think it just works. But same thing, like Oktoberfest, love. IPAs I can drink pretty much throughout the entire year. There's not like, but I also, one of my favorite beers is just a straight up Corona Extra. Just like give me a Corona Extra, summertime. Like tonight grilling, probably the same thing. Just have like one of those or two of those where you're grilling just because they're light and you just like drink them.
Yeah.
But I think in the winter I go more IPAs. Stouts I'm not a major fan of. Just because, again, it's like, I haven't like dove into it. It's like, I told you the other day, bourbon. Like I had bourbon on one of the last podcasts. I was like, it was actually pretty good, but I have to have bourbon on the rocks. I can't just drink straight bourbon. Like I just don't have that taste. Like whiskey, I like bourbon better than whiskey, even though I know they're kind of the same. But I guess don't tell people that from Kentucky. But it's like when you get I find like whiskey, I don't have as much. I don't like the taste as much as I do with bourbon. I think the bourbon has a little better. I just like that. Like I have a better palate for that. But it's I haven't grown into that. Where like I got into wine like pretty early. I remember like early 20s. I like started drinking dry reds. I don't like sweet. If you're like, oh, you drink dry red, I'm like right to it. Like rip the Band-Aid off, go right to the hardcore stuff, and I've loved it since. Beer, it's like you kind of work your way in, and IPA is really, I mean, they've taken off more probably in the last, 10 years? Like kind of to the level we see them now, or the availability we've seen them now. Like now you go into places and they're stocked
That's
full.
all there is.
Yeah, and I like them. Then you get all the people that are like snobby, like like they're not good anymore. I'm like I'll drink what I like. Like it's
Exactly.
And IPAs I don't think are going away because I still like the flavor. But yeah, no, it's good. So music, I'm gonna go in like order that I think is cool down to not cool. Meaning the Philadelphia Eagles may not get any airtime on this, but
That's fair.
are you going to dispatch for music?
Yeah.
Are you going to Shelburne?
Oh yeah.
Okay, me. I'm going. So just hit me up.
Yeah. Yeah. We were at Augusta as well. Both
Over at
nights.
Shelburne?
Yeah, both nights we were there. When they canceled both nights.
They canceled both nights.
Yeah. First night was because of the flooding. So that was that was that Thursday was like the week of the floods. So they were like, hey, we're this isn't the right time for the show. So we were literally on the ferry when we got the note that they canceled. So it was myself, two of our friends and their daughter, and we were like, oh well, we'll just go and and with everything going on, the state was pretty, everything over there was pretty slow. So we just went and ate at Lunig's instead, and we're like, at least we got a reservation. So, but we went and had dinner and went back on Friday and got there, and Bread and Puppet opened the show, and Bread and Puppet got through their thing, and literally like as soon as they finished, there was a lightning strike within a mile.
Oh my God.
So they sent everyone out. They evacuated the venue, and then literally like the weather just got worse. So it was just like we were there till like 8 o'clock, and we're like,
this isn't happening.
So we took off.
Have you seen Guster before?
Yeah. We actually saw that. We actually caught them 2 years ago. They played at the church on Church Street. They did an acoustic set.
Oh, really?
And
At the top of the hill?
Yeah. And it was like there were probably 120 people in the show, and it was fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because you went to Twiddle also.
Yep.
Which I didn't think was a good show.
Honestly, I think trying to think of the opening band now. Weekend.
One weekend or one opening weekend or
1 day weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, they stole the show. Those guys were great. That was actually like I was like, man, I'm impressed with these kids.
Well,
they're fantastic.
And I like Twiddle. I've learned Twiddle from
One Time Weekend.
I think you're right. Yeah, Jen and Chris like him, and so I got into them. Like they're good, and I like their music. Went to watch the show, and like it wasn't bad. I mean, it was good, but it wasn't like a lot of the songs I liked, and they got like it was. I don't mind jam. Like I like jam bands.
Yeah.
It was too jammy for me, like at that show, because some of the songs too. I'm like, at least if you're jamming a song that I know, I'll like kind of. It'll be, you know what I mean? I'll be a little bit more into it. Like if you're gonna jam on something long, they started out with the song I like, and then they jammed in. I'm like, this is great, and they went 30 minutes into some other songs and came back to it. I'm like, like take that like middle section, which is fine. To each their own. But you know who I like a lot is. Which I've got in same thing from Jen, but Mahali, the lead singer, just his band.
Oh yeah,
I am way more into that than Twiddle. I think his band's better.
Yeah,
I think his band's better. It's more my style, but they have the horns. They have they have. I feel like there's jam, but there's more like jam within a song, and that's why like last week or 2 weeks ago, two weekends ago, we went down to SPAC for DMB.
Yep,
and my favorite band, and like we go down. And I like that. They jam, but it's not like all jam. And they jam within the song. So you know the context of the song, and they don't go into 5 other songs and come back out into a song. Which, and again, I love the Dead. The Dead do that. And I just think it's great. But I do like the idea of like, hey, if you're going to jam to a song, and even if it's a 16 to 18 minute song, awesome. But you know that they're still in the song, and you can still hear the song. And
the nuances of like the certain beats and,
it's like
certain patterns.
It's kind of like going around the horn. You just kind of like throw the ball back and forth. But it's like, okay, you take it, and then you take it, and you take it. And I just love how it builds and builds and builds. That's the kind of like jam stuff I like. Yeah. Dispatch doesn't do a lot of jamming. No. But I love Dispatch.
Oh yeah. Well, were you at the Dispatch OARG Love Show in SPAC?
So I was.
Yep. Because Mahali actually joined them
which
for
I didn't,
part of their set.
And at the time, I didn't really know much about Mahali. And again, Jen, because anytime I think of Mahali, I think Jen. So she texted me. She's like, look who's going to be there. He actually sang... Did he sing Casey Jones with G-Love?
Yeah, I think so.
So they did, and I've seen G-Love open for like Jack Johnson back in the day, and I've seen him at a couple things.
I love G-Love.
Yeah, G-Love's great.
And
like one of my favorite songs that him and Jack did was Rodeo Clowns.
Oh yeah.
Still to this day, one of my favorite songs.
Yep.
And so they opened up, they played, and I didn't really, at the time, I didn't get to appreciate Mahali as much, but I've seen him probably play 3 times now at this point, within basically the last calendar year. Mm-hmm. And that was the worst. I'm going to say worst in quotations. It wasn't bad. It was the worst Dispatch show I've ever been to because they split. Yeah. And I've seen OAR separate. I've seen Dispatch separate. Mm-hmm. And I love both of them. They're two really good bands I like. My only thing is like I felt like both sets were kind of incomplete because they had to have a modified set because they had to try to bring them in. Yeah. And then I found that the collaborations at the end when they started playing together, but they were playing like REM, I'll be honest, I don't really remember the end of the night. So it's like at one point I'm sitting there, I'm like, why? So I ended up starting up in the upper decks. Yeah. We were inside, started the upper decks, ended the show in like this little like private box area because I had buddies that were there that I kind of hooked up with. I'm like, yeah, come down. I went, jumped in with them. Yeah. Watched probably the last like 6 songs there. And at one point, one of the people in the booth like holding up a card. I'm like, well, why she got cards? That's weird. Obviously, I'm like, I should know this, but... So they just were playing Crazy Game of Poker, and all of a sudden, like they were like throwing cards out in the crowd. I guess I don't remember. I'm like, I don't remember the ending. Like it was, it was a. Let's just say I had a lot of IPAs that night, but it was a fun. The music's great. Yeah, I thought the set list overall wasn't great because it was a modified set list.
Yeah, because it was like a shortened show for all the bands that were involved. You didn't get like a full show from anybody.
But if you saw, like you were at the last Shelburne one we went to like 3-4 years ago. Yep, Dispatch played. That was a fantastic set. Yeah. And then I saw them at Thompson's Point the following year, or later that year, whatever it was. That was a fantastic set. Mm-hmm. And then I've seen them play. I saw their free show down at Killington. Yep. And then I went out, which this is still my favorite show of theirs because we went out in 2011 when they sold out TD Garden 3 nights in a row, and I went to one of the shows. I forgot which one, but that was with Pete was still playing, so they had the 3 original guys. It was just the 3 guys on stage. Yeah. So that one I was like, this is awesome, and that's the only time I've ever saw the original band play. And then since then it's been the 3 guys they've added to it. Yeah.
Actually, I had a great time at the SPAC one, and honestly, the same thing. There was way too much beer involved in that, but The best part about it was the fact that like after G Love played and he was like, "Hey, I'm going to be up at the merch tent after." So we're like, "All right."
Did you go see him?
So we went and saw him. So
Nice.
we got a picture with him. Got to talk with him for like 4 or 5 minutes, like, and actually like hang out. Like he was like the like coolest guy. Like he was just like, yeah, he's like, I want to be around the people that are my fan. The best part was the fact, and of course, and you won't appreciate this, but I had my Eagles hat on, and him being from Philly.
I was gonna say he's a Philly guy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was like, I love the hat because it was the vintage old school Phillies logo, and he was like, dude, I love your hat. I'm like, well, thanks, man. I'm like, we appreciate your music. He's like, awesome. And yeah, I actually got to tell him a story about. So it's it's one of those, it's not a tearjerker, but my grandfather, when he passed away several years ago, we had had the funeral, did the like thing afterwards where everyone got together at a restaurant. We all kind of like the celebration of life type thing, and afterwards like he was probably one that I had a hard time with because I grew up with him.
Yeah.
Like I spent a lot of time with him, knew him really well, was really close with him, and I got in my car, and I think I actually had G Love CD in the CD player, and the first song that came on was Everything's Gonna Be All Right, and I was just like, that got me.
Yeah.
Then I'm sitting in my car.
Did you tell G Love this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I told him this story, and I was like, that got me. I was like, I made it through the funeral, made it through the celebration, made it through all that stuff. I was fine. I sat down in my car, start playing, and that song comes on.
Yeah.
And I'm like an 8-year-old kid that just got hit in the face with a baseball. Like just crying.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Caught myself after, got home, but I was like, yep, I needed that just as a release. And I told him, and I was like, that was perfect. So we actually got an autographed vinyl, and he was like,
so cool.
he's like, well, what do you want to put on there? I was like, yeah, throw some song lyrics on. So we wrote down, he was like, everything's going to be all right. Love G Love. And I'm like,
awesome.
Perfect. Like that
Seems like a good dude.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got like 3 or 4 friends that have met him, randomly, and they're just like, dude, he's like one of like the coolest guys out there, like in the music scene. Like,
And
he
been
just wants
around
to-
a long time.
oh yeah. Yeah. He's been touring for years.
He's one guy too that like never like I think cracked like the real high level.
Yeah.
But he's always kind of stayed in this general area,
Yeah.
which is like with a lot of these well-known bands.
Yeah.
But I feel like he settles into that, and I think
And he's happy with it.
yes, correct. And I think he loves the collaboration with those guys, and like
Yeah.
he's got his own music, and I think it's great. But I do think he likes the aspect of like jamming with people and guest appearing
Yeah.
and doing stuff. And again, you think these guys, they play the same songs over and over. It keeps it fresh for him, and I think he collaborates on a lot of stuff. And I think for some of those guys, he's like, this is just what I like to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like he kind of like understands what he likes and just owns it and just sit and like, because I've seen him open now probably for like 3 or 4 completely different bands. All I mean, all kind of in the same genre.
Yeah.
But he opens for them, and it's like, I'm like, oh, like there's at least a legit opening. Someone that I want to actually see.
Well, and like he's one of those guys too. Like you could see him at a restaurant here in Plattsburgh.
Yeah.
And one, it's the fact that he would like literally just go out and like go out to eat someplace and not even like bother to like any fanfare or anything like that. But most people wouldn't even recognize him either.
Out of context, I think I want it.
Yeah.
Maybe it would.
Yeah.
It's always tough, like when things are out of context, because
Yes.
then you get in the thing
Absolutely.
where it's like is that
Does it just look like him?
is that so like? And I've done this with friends. Like we look at someone, and you're like, I'm like 99% certain that's them, but like
Yeah.
they're at this thing that I never thought I would see them at. So I'm like, maybe it's not. It'd be weird to be like, hey, but
Yeah.
then it's also weird to not say something. So then you're in that weird spot. You're like, I don't know what to do. Yeah, I was looking for the set list for Dispatch. I don't think this isn't their full set list, but they did cover "Friend of the Devil," which I love. And then CCR, that was a great, but that they played more than that.
Yeah.
They probably played what, 15 songs?
Maybe 12.
12. Yeah, there
Maybe
wasn't.
around 12. It wasn't like, I don't think it was like a full on set, but yeah.
Yes, because some of these they don't have like great set lists that you can. You know what's actually a really good one. Maybe this will be better. Do you know archive.org?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
So archive.org is.
Oh yeah, so 15.
This is it. Yeah,
Yep.
This is it. So Open Up, which is an awesome opening song.
Yeah.
Only the Wild Ones were one of my top. Actually, that one came on. Was their last album, and that one is probably in my top 3 all-time songs by Dispatch. Like I love that song.
Yeah.
Skin the Rabbit's great. Break or Fall. Break or Fall was okay. Not my favorite, but it's good. Bang Bang, one of my all-time favorites. Paired with Friend of the Devil, which is one of my all-time favorite Dead songs.
Yep.
Past the Falls is as old school as you get.
Yep.
That is on the first album, right? Past the Falls.
Yeah.
Painted Yellow Lines, I actually do like that. Out Loud, which I love. Don't Let Me Down. That's they just kind of added that at the end. But Out Loud's great. Passerby, Out Loud, Open Up, The General, Flying Horses, Elias, Bang Bang. I said Bang Bang.
Yeah.
Those were like hard high school years. Like Passerby, old school. General, old school.
Yeah.
Like I wish they would play Silent Steeples. They haven't played that in a long time,
Yep.
but that's a great song, especially when just three of them used to just jam on the acoustics. Flying Horses is one of my all-time favorite songs.
Yep.
I actually looked up Flying Horses is about a carousel out in Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that. And when you start to hear the lyrics and I read about it, I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's a cool story how they
Yeah.
tied it into that. Elias is probably their biggest anthem song. Like Elias is one of those songs like they just that one's like I want to say it's like super emotional, but it's one of those songs like it's a powerful song.
Yeah.
Like with the lyrics and the music and just the way they jam on it. It's the End of the World, not my favorite, but they actually came back out and played that with OAR.
Yeah.
Towards the end. Letter to Lady J, I don't mind, but they've been playing that a lot towards the end, like as a closer, but it's not my favorite closer.
No.
Like if you're gonna close with Elias would be a great closer. You know, Flying Horses would be a great closer.
Yep.
I think you got to go something big at the end. Like I love Bang Bang. I don't think that's a closer, but Bang Bang is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, that's a mid set song.
One of my favorite ones I've never heard live is Hey Hey. Remember that song?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that one I used to wear out. I don't know if I can play this. I don't think we get like. You would know this song. It's kind of fast paced. It's like Railway. Is it Railway? Railway? Hey Hey. Let's go this one, bootleg version. So this is probably a top. This might be a top 5 song for me. I've never heard it live though. Mm-hmm. How do I? Okay, wait.
There you go.
This is also weird because those guys in that photo aren't the guys in the band.
No.
Chad is on the left. I don't
Yeah.
know who the other two are. That's not the. That's weird. Isn't that weird to have those 3 guys there?
That's why it's a bootleg video.
You know the song, right?
Oh yeah.
I don't think that's live version.
No.
Phil Kagi. This is from Hatchow? Ah, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that Pete? What? That's not Pete. What is this? This must have been right before Mike and Steve. Why did they say Pete? Oh, Pete must have wrote it.
Yeah. No, I think
This looks like the band. That looks like old school Chad right there. Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah, Chad with the dreads.
2000.
Brad with long hair.
This is throwing it way back.
Wow, I want to save this. I'm going to watch this one later.
Yep. No, I think.
But look at these guys. I mean, they were probably still at Middlebury at this point. Maybe
Yeah.
just out?
Yeah, I mean 2000. Yeah.
2000.
That would have been like right around.
Or they
like-
went... I don't know. Either case, I'm a massive Dispatch guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever see him back then? Like pre-2004? I didn't get to see
I
him.
don't think I saw him back then. I think the first time I saw him was probably around 2008, 2009. I'm trying to think where it was.
Well, I think between that time, they did MSG in 07.
Yeah.
And they came back, and I think they did the Kennedy Center in 09. And I don't
Yeah.
know if they played any time before 11. 11 was when they
Yeah.
first came back out. Because I used to listen to them, and I was like, they're done.
maybe-
They're not
maybe it
touring.
was.
This sucks. And
Yeah.
in 2011, they're like, oh, we're actually getting back together. I'm like,
Yeah.
hell yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, it was probably right around that 2011 when they came back out.
Yeah, because they had a pretty big tour that year. They
Yeah.
went down, I think, to... they also did a show down in Red Bull Arena down in Jersey. So maybe it was... I don't know if that was 11. Maybe that was 12 or 13.
Yeah.
But either case, it was awesome.
Yeah. No, I think and for me too, the other big thing is always like the venues too. Like the venue makes such a difference.
What's your favorite venue? Do you have one?
Man,
Like, I love SPAC. I mean, I just think SPAC.
So I like SPAC. I do. There's something about SPAC I like because it's kind of it feels more like a community, depending on like who you're seeing there, obviously. But honestly, like one of my favorite places is probably still like Shelburne Farms. Like I love that space and that environment. There's something about that I just have a great appreciation for.
I was actually going to say, I mean, Shelburne is great. We went to Thompson's Point. Thompson's Point was cool too because you're down by the water down in Portland. But the thing with Shelburne, it's an amphitheater. So it's not even an amphitheater. It's just the hillside.
It's just a natural
Yeah, you
it's
say
like it's like Red Rocks, it's like
Yeah.
that same thing. Like it's just a naturally occurring formation. It just happens to work out
and there's
perfectly well.
There's literally not a bad seat there.
No.
Just sit. You're going to
No.
see the stage
No,
perfectly.
I mean, like
nobody's in
one
front of you.
One of the best shows I saw was Tragically Hip at Shelburne Farms.
Ah, damn.
Was probably my and
love
honestly
T-Hip.
and only because of that show, I remember it because it's like absolutely, one of those ones they never play. They did, and of course my brain's gonna fail me now.
I wonder if I can get the setup here. So what year was this?
This would have been 7 years ago.
This is the other thing too. Like OAR set list that night was kind of garbage. Not bad. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great.
Fiddler's Green. Thank you. That was that was the first time in
Fiddler's
years
Green's
they
amazing.
played Fiddler's Green, which is like my
love that
favorite
song.
song by them. And I remember I was like, we're sitting like right in the we got in there early. We were sitting like right like where they like cut off. You can have like chairs and stuff. So like there's like all the there's standing space in front, but there's like maybe 100 feet where you're not allowed to have chairs. And we were like the first row where you could have chairs and stuff to sit. And of course we're all just standing there. And he was like, yeah, he's like, so Gord goes on, he's like, yeah, we don't really play this one very often, but we felt it's
right
time
there.
to bring it back out.
Fiddler, 2009.
Yeah. And
New Orleans is Sinking is one of my favorite all-time songs.
Yeah, but he started as soon as I heard that first note from Fiddler's
by a
Green,
Century.
I was like literally like front row center because I'm like, this is my song. Something about that song that I absolutely love.
Gift Shop, Poets.
Bobby Cajun.
They play. Oh yeah, Bob
Grace
Cajun.
too.
Fully Completely is not bad, but
Yeah.
Courage.
Yep.
Fiddler's Green's amazing.
Yeah.
Music will work. Blow Up High Dough is one of my favorites.
Locked in the Trunk of. I mean, like literally, and that's the thing. Like, I have every single album.
Wow.
I think I've got half of them on vinyl, and I've
Did you
got
read
all of them.
was it Philadelphia Fink or something? What's the newest one?
Saskadelphia.
Philadelphia. I knew it was like
Saskadelphia. Yep.
because that was all old stuff they recorded and it was post like they did it
After Gord
they
passed,
stopped. Yeah.
Yep.
How do you like that album? Because that was their old
It's
stuff.
good.
It's all them,
Yeah,
right?
It's like
Just unreleased?
it's like the old like Road Apples era.
Yeah.
Like real old school. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like that's one of those bands that I look and I'm just like, people either appreciate them or they don't, which I get. But I'm like, as far as like, I'm one of the people that appreciates them. I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard a bad song.
I love Wheat Kings too.
Oh, Wheat Kings is fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's one of those, and they're a band where, a lot of times you go to a concert and you feel like the crowd is energizing the band.
Yeah.
Like they're getting energy, they're pulling the energy from the crowd, and that's what's getting them going.
Yeah.
And then you go and you watch a band like Tragically Hip, and it's like Gord just exudes energy into the crowd.
Yeah.
Like he's the point of energy, when you
Yeah.
watch them play and you're just like, it's incredible.
Did you watch the documentary?
No, I haven't actually watched that one.
Do you know about it though?
Yeah.
I know some people can't watch it. Like they're like,
Yeah. I mean, I was at the second to last show. When they
Ottawa?
were their last tour up in Ottawa.
Yeah, my brother-in-law
And,
went there too.
Yeah, and that was just, it was like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because like what's going on, like it's out there, it's the last time they're touring and playing, and it's like you're like, this is the last time we're going to see this band.
I think there's one guy, local guy, went to Kingston for the final show,
Yep.
and they said like they came out like 7 times for like an encore or something
yeah.
crazy. Like they just kept coming out.
Yeah.
They played every song they knew.
like I think I watched it on
The live
CBC
BBC?
CBC
Or CBC,
But,
yes,
Yep,
CBC.
CBC had it because
Yep.
they were like, they are Canada, so they were like, they had the live broadcast of like the whole show nationally broadcast, and I watched that show.
The documentary was pretty good though. It's very like
Yeah,
it's a tearjerker, but it's if you like the band, it's very well done.
yeah, yep, long time running. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean they just talk about like Gord like having to relearn lyrics, like just didn't know the lyrics. Like
Yeah.
it's sad to see, but it's like
Yeah.
you also give the guy. I'm like the guy just went out on
He
top.
just, oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
He didn't stop until it was the end, and then it was like, okay, time to go.
And it's crazy. The other guys just stopped. They're like, all right, we're good.
Yeah,
Like, just done. That was her band. Like, we're good.
Yeah, I mean, without they're like, hey, you know what? We were a band, and without one of our members, we're not that band.
You see a lot of like. I always find like think of all the bands that have just been playing it, and again, I think a lot of it. I mean, obviously, you lose like a lead singer. It's very hard to replicate that. But like I take Dave. Like Dave, they now have 3 original members and they get 7 guys that typically tour.
Yeah.
And the other guys are just, I mean, world class musicians.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Timmy Reynolds is still playing, and Tim's been
Yeah.
around since the beginning. But when you start looking at that, like if something ever happened to Dave or something ever happened to Carter, then it's like, well, is the band dead? I mean, the band probably would be, as the Dave Matthews Band would probably be dead. Yep. Same thing you see with the Dead. They went from Grateful Dead to Dead and Company. It's kind of like, well, we still got a couple of the guys. Let's now call a new band, bring in John Mayer, and let's play.
Yeah.
And now they're done, but you're still like Bob Weir's actually gonna be at Shelburne.
Yeah.
So, which I kind of was like, I may want to go to that, but yeah, I mean, so those guys are still touring, and Bob's in great shape. So I mean, it's depending on how long they want to go, but you got to think Dead and Company's been going 8 years now.
Yeah.
Which is quite a long time to tour as like not even the original,
Oh yeah.
6.
Well, it's like the hardest thing is like you've got all of these artists that are kind of like that aging artist group that you're like,
how many more
like,
shows?
I gotta I mean, like I went and saw watched Roger Waters last year. Yeah. So from Pink Floyd, they're like still to this day they are my all time favorite band, and so like I never got a chance to see Pink Floyd like as Pink Floyd. Yeah. So when Roger Waters was touring, I was like, well, I'm like, I can't see Pink Floyd, but yeah, you're crazy if you think I'm not going to go see whatever part of it that I can see. But then I like Willie Nelson. Like I'm like,
who's 90 by the way.
Got to go see Willie Nelson.
Have you seen him before?
No,
I've never seen Willie.
No, I've never seen him live, and I'm like, I feel like I have to go see him because God forbid, like anything. I mean, like I saw, I went and saw Chris Cornell solo.
That'd be cool.
A year and a half before he died.
Yeah.
And it was like, thank God, because like that he was like the voice of my generation growing up. I mean, I was like that. I was that coming of age in like the grunge era, like in the early '90s. So like Chris Cornell, Eddie Vedder, those guys were all the voice of that generation for music for me. So like if I hadn't seen Eddie, or if I hadn't seen Chris before that happened, I'd be like,
you must have seen Pearl Jam.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Foo Fighters.
Yep.
See, Pearl Jam, I've never seen either of those two bands, and I would love to. Just like
Pearl Jam is fantastic. I saw them in Philadelphia. Yeah. Actually, we got VIP tickets, so we were like right down front, like 20 feet from stage. That was a great show.
It was crazy. So I was watching. So I'm just looking at Pink Floyd. They started in '64. Oh
yeah.
David Gilmour, Roger Waters. Obviously, those are like the two that I know the best. But like Nick, Sid, Barrett, Richard. So when they ended up. So I started listening to, and I listened on Sirius. So Grateful Dead played at Cornell. Like they had the remake of the '70s. It wasn't a remake; they played at Cornell, but it was a whole different set. And of course, I'm just like, I'm gonna listen to a little bit of this. I listened to all 4 hours of it. It was great. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like listening, and of course, you're just listening to a lot of jam music. And I am doing I'm going down the Wikipedia rabbit hole. Yeah. So I pull up like whatever. I'm going down. So then I'm sitting there, and I ended up coming across the Crickets, because one of the songs they cover is by the Crickets. And I'm like, I've heard the band. Who's in the Crickets? Go look at the Crickets, back from the 50s. Buddy Holly's in it, and with like 2 other guys, I forgot the names, whatever. Happens. Buddy Holly obviously dies young. Yeah. Then you start realizing like the Buddy Holly effect across just rock and roll history, to the point where like the Rolling Stones... The Beatles named their names after the Crickets. They're like, they're Bug. And then we're the Beatles. But they end up using beat instead of the actual Beatles term. But then you start listening to it and like, holy crap. And this kid from, I think he was from Ludlow, Texas. Like, he's Buddy Holly. And then you start like going down the deep rabbit hole. Like the Stones were like, that's who we listen to. Yeah. And imagine that and then the influence. And then obviously you see all these bands that were formed in the 60s. And then, they obviously everybody keeps pushing the envelope and how music's changed. But the Stones still sell out, obviously Roger Waters still carries a crowd. Yep. You get these bands that have just transcended generations, and they just keep going. I went to the Dave concert. There's like little kids under 10 there. You have people in their 60s and 70s listening to them. Of course, you have a bunch of our generation that are just like loving it. But you just look at the level of musicianship and just like the people that still pack it, and like they're not on the radio. Like you're not seeing them on mainstream, but it's like the Dead. You don't hear a Dead song on the radio ever. You go to the concert and it's like you're bidding to get tickets basically to go to these shows, because they just have this mass following. And I was thinking, like, would you rather be and again, maybe I'm wrong on this, I don't really know her that well. Like, would you rather be like a Taylor Swift that is like and I don't know really any of her songs anymore. I remember like Teardrop on My Guitar. Like that's the Taylor Swift I remember years ago.
I actually know no Taylor Swift.
Okay, so that was like her first big song. Like she was at the Clinton County or Essex County Fair. Like that was like back in the day. Yeah. Like, would you rather be that, or would you rather be someone like the Dead, Pearl Jam, Dave, the Stones, that have had this like
influence.
This massive following that maybe weren't. Well, I shouldn't say the Stones are obviously very mainstream, but take like the Grateful Dead. They were never a really mainstream band, but they just have this really loyal base of followers. Like I would actually prefer to have that versus like a Taylor Swift.
Oh yeah.
If I had to be a band or like a Dave band, like you go there and everybody knows like.
Well, I mean, isn't that the running joke that like there's really only like 40,000 Dave Matthews Band fans,
just follow him
but
around.
they go to every show.
Yeah. And like, but like a song, like they haven't played this song. Like I don't know last time they played a song. You look at it, they haven't played the song in 15 years. Like you can't say that about most like bands now. One, they haven't been around that long, but number two, they play the same songs over and over. And then yesterday, Dave played Baby Blue. He hasn't played that. I looked it up, 2012. Like you're talking 13 years since he's played it live, and just like happens just to pull it out.
Yeah,
because they have hundreds of songs, and they're all like oh my god. And of course, when you follow a band.
Yeah, you know what's been played, you know what's going on.
But you have the appreciation because you're like, this is like deep cut.
I went and saw Tool last year. So Tool, saw them in Philadelphia.
How was that?
Unbelievable. So that was a band like that. For me, that was like a huge one. I had, I've had tickets to see Tool 8 different times. 8 times. Well, 7 times prior to this one. I had tickets to go see Tool, and every one of those times, I was unable to go to the show. So I missed Tool 7 times when I had tickets. Finally, this is the 8th time, and I finally actually got to go see them. And I mean, yeah, it was incredible. We were on the balcony in the first row, just like probably 15 rows back from the stage.
Where was this at?
Down in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was awesome to finally like actually get to see these guys play, because I mean they're one of those bands where I'm just like, they still boggle my mind. I mean, I played in a band in college. And we did a ton of different covers. We did Sublime, we did 311, we did Rage Against the Machine. Like we covered a little bit of like all over the place. We did a punk version of House of the Rising Sun. But like we did, and all of those songs, like literally we'd be like, hey, let's play this song. And as a band, we'd sit down, we'd all like learn our parts, we'd come together, we'd play it. We're like, okay, that's pretty good. We'd practice it a couple more times and we had it down. We did 46 and 2 by Tool. We had to practice that song every single night, because if we didn't, like, we lost it because of the way that like the way that they create their music. I mean, you're trying to play 4 different instruments on 4 different time measures, like, but it weaves all back together. But when you're trying to when you're playing guitar, you can't listen to the drums to get your you're not with the drums, you're not with the bass, like you're doing your own thing. And it was just like, it was the hardest thing in the world. And I'm like, and these guys do this on like every song. That's
when you look at, just the, and again, I'll go back to Dave Matthews Band. Like that's a band that they're all so damn good that they go all over the place and they bring it back and someone goes off. And the one thing I like is, they're playing and it's like every single person throughout the show and this is actually very rare, I find, in most bands. Like every person in the show has multiple moments of like a solo or multiple moments where they can showcase their skills, and it's very much a band. And I think when you take all these people and pull them together, it like collectively, like people obviously know Dave, but I'm like, every single one on their own is a fantastic musician at their given whatever.
Yeah.
So when you just see them kind of like all move to the side and let someone just go, and then like the crowd is losing their mind over the Rashawn's playing the trumpet and people are losing their mind over a trumpet solo.
Yeah.
And then or Jeff, like Jeff came out they opened up with a Stone, and Jeff did like he's a saxophonist, did like a 2-minute solo that was unbelievable, to the point where he just like kept building this solo up and he was like blacked out playing. Like this guy was just in his zone. And you can just see the band like just like vibing with it and like just kind of like feeding off, like you said, feeding off the energy. It's like they get the crowd energy, but they're feeding off of each other. And you can just see at the end of the show, they're like high-fiving and fist-pumping because it's all new to them. Because they're just like, oh, this guy just went off, and they're just kind of like feeling it out and jam into it. And I love the improvisation like during the show. One of my favorite shows we've ever been to, my wife's a massive Coldplay fan. We've seen Coldplay half a dozen times.
Yeah.
Coldplay's fantastic. My only gripe with Coldplay, their show is their set list from show to show for the entire tour is 90% the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So we've seen them back-to-back nights before at the same venue. I'm like, great.
Same show.
90% the same. I'm like, they open with the same song, second song was the same, third song was the same. Now, granted, the songs are great, the experience is great. It's just a very high level energy. But besides going to like the C stage and playing like one or two like deep cuts, it was the same like songs. And I like showing up to a venue and like showing up to
No
Dispatch
idea
and
what's
being
gonna
like,
go
I
on.
don't know what they're gonna play, and I know every song, so this is gonna be a treat.
Yeah.
And they're gonna pull out Past the Falls. So you'd be like, holy shit, they played Past the Falls. But that's kind of the that's kind of the bands I like, where you can really get into their catalog, understand, like, and this is not every band. I might only know, maybe a dozen bands at this level.
Yeah.
But you start realizing a bunch of their songs, and when you go to their concert, like, I am going to be happy no matter what.
Yeah.
And they might play a cover, but they play it in their style. I'm not a huge cover guy. Like, I like it, but not huge.
Yeah.
I saw Zach.
And it depends on what they do. I mean, that's like cover songs they're like the hardest thing in the world, because if you can have the most incredible band play the worst cover of a song, like it's so hard. And some songs like you just shouldn't cover. There's some bands that I'm like, I'm sorry, but like the original was perfect. Why are you trying to, like, I get that you're trying to like create your own thing and put your own spin on this thing, and you're doing it out of this level of respect. But like there's some that I'm like, you just don't do it.
So this is okay. Let me see this. I watched this yesterday, and of course, this stuff just like happens to be like thrown in my face. I'm like, of course I'm gonna hit it. I love this song right here. So John Mayer. Some people don't like him.
Yeah.
I like him. I actually saw him for the first time in Albany last year.
My biggest thing, man, is that, and is most people don't realize that like the John Mayer they hear on the radio and real John Mayer musician are two different. Like the John Mayer trio, as like a blues band is incredible. I'm not a big fan of John Mayer's like kind of pop style.
Yeah.
But like his blues music, like from the trio, is absolutely incredible. Like I've played that for people before, and they're like, I don't like John Mayer, and I'm like, oh, you should hear this other band. And I play it, and they're like, wow, these guys are really good. And I'm like, yeah, it's John Mayer. And they're like, what?
So, yeah. So we saw him, and we actually had a great set list when we went and watched him. But so I saw this the other day. So John Mayer performs American Pie, which is one of my all-time favorite songs.
Yeah.
Don McClain, like just classic song. So he ends up getting up, and obviously I'm not going to play the whole thing here.
Yeah.
But he ends up playing the song. So here's the crazy thing about this. It is a 10-minute and 26-second segment. The normal song's about 8 minutes or so.
Oh, yeah.
Never repeats really any lyrics. I mean, the chorus, but there are so many verses.
Yeah.
That they ended up performing this song on a late show. We got to think, like, they get about, 50 minutes maybe?
Yeah.
45 to 50 minutes because of commercials. So you're saying out of the 45 minutes you're on the air,
you're going to let
10 minutes is one song by John Mayer. They let him play the entire song, and John played it all the way through in like a style of John Mayer, but he didn't take away from the original. But like, so if you go, like, it is so good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely John. He's got that little he's got the song. He's got
but he's playing it like as a tribute to the original. He's not like.
But I wouldn't say this is
really weird.
I wouldn't say this is a karaoke version at all.
No,
but it's almost one where if you heard John sing this, you'd be like, this kind of sounds like his own song because he played it in such a cool style. I mean, it was his style, but and then like obviously like. It is just an amazing version. So, of course, I watched this all out. I saw it. I'm like, like, one, I love American Pie, but I'm like, I got to listen to this. And they played the whole song, and like, that is absolutely incredible. One of the best covers I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's some great cover songs out there, and there's some that are just like, why would you do this? Like being a huge Pink Floyd fan, like there was a couple that I've heard that I'm just like, You should literally just be like removed from the lexicon of music for covering that song. Like,
there's flops.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you go back to I heard this again. Dave Matthews Band. They talk about like All Along the Watchtower. They've been covering All Along the Watchtower since like 91, 92 when they first started. And someone said, I think the version was Dylan wrote it, Hendrix popularized it, Matthews perfected it. Like that's kind of the idea behind it. It's like, but you can see how like people have added their own spin on this, like and I would say when I mean, not Fade Away. Again, it's a Cricket song. You listen to it, it's like it's a 2-minute song. Or like the lyrics, they go through it really, really quick. And then the Stones covered it. It was like a little quicker. And then the Dead was like, we're going to take that 2-minute song and jam on it for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
But they made it really cool. And they played it the only concert I've ever seen them. Look, this is the Dead, not Dead and Company.
Yeah.
So when they had like Phil Lesh was still playing, and Bob and Billy and Mickey, they were all playing, and they played that song, and it was like such a great song. But it's just so different than the original. You hear the original, and you're like, I can't believe that. Yeah, the lyrics are the same, but there's almost nothing else that's the same, even though it's credited as a Cricket song. Yeah, it's just very cool. Autograph collecting. Sorry, total rough music.
Oh no,
I love music. That's what I'm like. But
and honestly, you can actually tie that into the music thing because a lot of my autographs are musicians. Like that's what's your most coveted? So I have two that are probably the most coveted. So I have a full Pink Floyd band autograph with all four members, and I also have a full Tragically Hip all band members, including Gord. Those are probably the two. Like those are like the big ones.
So when you collect autographs, is this autographs collecting in the sense that, like, physically got them in person, or some of them are like
finding them,
or some just
hunting
bought?
them down to try and find them? Just having that piece of history that that somebody's like they've directly been a part of. So like between probably most of what we have are going to be authors and musicians. We've got several. I actually just got was through a online rare books and vintage manuscript auction. It's a Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury.
New Hampshire guy, right?
Yeah. But it was the couple that manages him, they basically went and they self-published 451 copies of the 50th anniversary of Fahrenheit 451.
And they had make Catcher in the Rye too.
No, it was Salinger.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. J.D. Salinger.
Yep. Yeah. But then they also went through and they contracted Ralph Steadman to do artwork for 451. And Ralph Steadman was Hunter S. Thompson's autograph. So Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail. He was like legendary for the whole gonzo journalism thing.
Okay.
So Ralph Steadman did all these really crazy, weird art for Hunter during the 60s and 70s into the 80s. And they actually contracted him to do the artwork for 451. And of these 451 copies they published, they had all of them autographed by Ray Bradbury and Ralph Steadman.
All together.
So yeah. So now I have this copy of Fahrenheit 451 that is both Ralph Steadman and Ray Bradbury autographed. The one I actually just got for my birthday this year from my awesome girlfriend was actually an autographed Hunter S. Thompson, which are
really
impossible to find. Anyone who has them is not getting rid of them. So trying to find them online, they're upwards of most of them are $8,000 to $10,000 easily to try and find any Hunter S. Thompson autographs. So
right there. I mean, obviously, Wikipedia always put the signature.
Yep. Yeah, and so I actually got it was the last book that he published. And I got an autographed copy of that.
What's his most famous book?
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is probably the most famous.
Okay.
The Rum Diaries was also another of his that's pretty well known. Because that I think that actually turned out into a movie. You read a lot of these too? Yeah, I have the whole collection. I've read everything he's ever written. So you're a big reader also? Yeah. But his big thing was that he was actually he created this gonzo journalism. The Hells Angels. Mm-hmm. So he wrote the book The Hells Angels. And his whole premise of gonzo journalism was really just like subjecting himself to this existence and like putting himself in the story and then writing it from the inside. So like for Hells Angels, when he wrote that, he literally hung out with the Hells Angels in Los Angeles and just kind of like integrated him into them and just hung around with them and got to experience everything they were doing and then wrote this book about it. And like Sonny Barger, who was the head of the Hells Angels, was like, when he found out what Hunter was actually writing, he was like furious.
Wow.
Like Hunter thought he was going to be killed. Like it was like all this crazy stuff.
So Steadman's still alive.
Oh yeah. Steadman? Yep. I actually have an autographed print of his and then the Ray Bradbury book. But yeah, he's a crazy, he actually does all the artwork for it's Flying Dog Brewery out of Delaware.
What's your favorite author?
Hunter S. Thompson, probably. Yeah. Like I said, I've got every book he's ever published, all of his letters. I think my next thing now is trying to go and hunt down some of the original Rolling Stone magazines, because he was actually not like he really kind of helped launch Rolling Stone as a journalist for them. So he actually knew the I can't think of his name now, but the initial editor who started Rolling Stone magazine, basically contracted Hunter to write a bunch of stuff.
So F. Scott Fitzgerald, I love The Great Gatsby. I would
Yep.
love to get. I'm sure you could find it.
Yeah.
Like obviously in great port, but like you start looking at. I mean, besides like the remake, like the original
reproductions.
autograph,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we start looking at a lot of these. Like, I think those would be cool to get.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of autographs. I was never an autograph collector. I think I have like an Arnold Palmer.
Yeah.
I think I have. I think we ended up getting it at one point. My thing with it's like autographs or like selfies. Like one, I find like selfies. I don't really take photos of people. Like I think I've done it maybe one time ever, and usually it's just purely to send to like a buddy.
Yeah.
Like, yo, look I just met. It's not like something that I want. I'm not posting it online. I'm like, but I also don't. Like, to me, I'd much rather, if I saw somebody cool, I'd probably be like, oh, it's really cool to meet you. But I don't think I'd be asking for a photo. Like, even like athletes or like if Tiger Woods walked by me, I'm probably not asking for a photo.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, I mean, who knows? If I'm there, I probably would. But I'm saying, like, in general, I'd just be like, it's cool, like, to meet him,
Yeah.
Or I always had this, like, weird thought that you just, like, show up one day and you're just, like, chilling and, like, I know it's, like, weird. But imagine if you're just, like, sitting, like, I don't know, some random spot that you had to be, and this like well-known person that you're like a fan of or like admire kind of sits down and you're just like stuck there and you just like start shooting the breeze for like an hour for no reason, but I mean just in the sense that like we're both here and I'm like
may as well.
hey, and he's like I'm waiting for whatever, and like
you're at an airport or something, for instance.
and you're just like
they
sitting
just
there
happen to
waiting
be
for
catching
the
the same
flight,
flight.
and they're just like open and they just start talking. Like I just talked to them for an hour. Like I wouldn't need an autograph. I wouldn't need a photo.
Yeah.
I'm like I have the story. Like you with G Love. Like I just had the story. I talked to him. Like that's cool.
Yep. And I'm the same way. Like I would appreciate that interaction more than like the part of it. The experience would definitely outweigh any like physical thing that came out of it. Absolutely.
Like I have some autographs. Like when I was a kid, like I randomly got Charles Barkley's autograph at a PGA tournament event, and there's some other stuff like that. But overall, but I would say like if this is like that would be cool. I do like F. Scott Fitzgerald. I think the only author I have. I'm a big Ryan Holiday fan. He does like a lot of the Daily Stoic and like Eagles the Way or Enemy. All that kind of stuff. So a couple times when I order books, you can get like a signed copy. So he'll send it, and I had a person. I think I got 2 books for my kids, and you could personalize them. They didn't put the name, but he put like kind of like you said, like everything's gonna be all right, like kind of like that. He would write it and then sign it. So I probably have at this point like 3 or 4 of his autographs because I get his book autographed by him just because I thought it was cool. It wasn't. I mean, it was like $10 more to order them. So like, screw it. Like, give me an autograph. But that's cool. So like, I didn't know you liked the authors, but I like that. Authors are probably those are things I gravitate towards because I just like get like knowledge from them, and I find as I read more, I'm like fascinated with just their thinking process and their research process. And
and hunting down the ones that and I think the autograph thing for me is getting the ones that are the like you can't get or hard to get ones. Those are the ones that are like it's like it's more of a challenge. I mean, like I can go and order this book from this guy's website, and he's going to send me an autographed copy, and that's cool. But like
it's also the meaningfulness. Like in my office, I have one autograph. It's a Vladimir Guerrero baseball bat. I had Vladimir Guerrero's autographs when I was a kid. Yep. Like in person, I got it. Expos, my favorite player as a kid. And then
I should have worn my Expos hat.
Oh, massive Expos fan. My favorite sports team of all time to this day is still the Expos. Yeah. And if I have not found, they left in 2004. I have not followed baseball since 2004. Yeah. Since 2005. Sorry. They went to nationals. I'm like, I tried. I'm like, I can't do this.
It's not the same thing.
Can't do this. Not like not even fun. No. But then someone I know basically said like, listen, I came across this Hall of Fame bat. He signed it at the Hall of Fame. He actually wrote the stuff on it, and there's like a couple like stray marks on the bat that he might have just like nipped with the thing. But I was like, you know what? Because that player was meaningful to me as a child and is still my favorite baseball player of all time because he played for the Expos. So that's the only one I have where I'm like, hey, we'll get you, whoever signed Mike Trout, I'm like, I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really care. Like,
Yeah.
I know he's a good baseball
Yeah.
player, not my time. Even if he said, hey, here's a Derek Jeter autograph, and I always respected the Yankees. Jeter, I might, just because he was always my favorite of the Yankees, but still,
Yeah.
I would be like, I'm good, because there wasn't as much of a connection where, like, yeah. So I mean, that's just something. I think that ultimately, I got a lot of golfers' autographs going to majors and stuff, but I wouldn't say like I got Mike Weir's autograph when he was in 2003 when he was the Masters champion, like the reigning Masters champion. I got his autograph, which was cool. It was, I mean, it wasn't at the Masters, but it was at the PGA actually that following August.
Yep.
But yeah,
No,
but it's cool.
It's the meaningful thing, It's the, and I can go. I mean, like, I'm not interested in like the easy ones that I can go and like just get for whatever reason. Like, I want the ones that actually have either some connection to me personally or some meaning, as far as that goes. So like, having Hunter S. Thompson's, like, I'm not going to be able to get that. Like, I'm never going to have a chance to sit down and have a conversation with him. So, having like something that he's hand autographed, that's awesome. Ralph Steadman, same thing. I mean, he's still alive, but the chances that I'm ever going to like randomly just meet Ralph Steadman, pretty slim to none. So, Pink Floyd, I'm not going to ever get their autograph in hand, but they are my favorite band of all time. Tragically Hip, same thing. They're if there's Pink Floyd, my next one right there is right after that's going to be Tragically Hip. So having like those autographs and those things, like I have one that's it's Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, and Steve Buscemi from The Big Lebowski, and it's a photo with the three of them at the bowling lane, and I've got all three of their autographs on it.
So, question, because I didn't realize how freaking hot it is in here. Are you hot?
I'm good. But,
Are you? I am dying. So I don't know what it is. It's never been this hot, but I feel like it's so hot out today that like
it's just baking the inside.
Yeah, now I'm like, I should have had a fan in here. It's getting hot. Okay, last story we're gonna tell. Tell me about the ordained Dudist priest.
Yeah, so that was really that. I kind of did that whole thing on a whim. I'm a huge fan of The Big Lebowski. Like the concepts of Dudism, to me, it's just it's basically the whole premise is just live and let live. Like, treat people like a human being. Let them do what they, as long as they're not hurting you, why bother hurting them?
Yeah.
Like that to me is like, that's what we should be doing. And my friend years and years ago was talking about, he's like, oh, someday I might get married. And he's like, it'd be awesome if you could do the ceremony. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm like, I know you can go online and like, get ordained from whatever weird, churches out there. So then I was like, I kind of knew some ideas about like what Dudism was. And I was like, all right, we'll take a look. And so I actually found, I was like, oh, I can actually be ordained through the Church of the Latter-day Dude. And I was like, well, that's perfect. So I actually went through and I did like, literally you go online, you sign up for it, and you're ordained. Like there's literally nothing to it. Because again, it's Dudist. It's like, dude, just, do your thing, whatever. So I went through, got that. And then years later, actually, so never really used it. And then one of my friends, her and her fiance at the time were like, oh, we're looking to get married. And I was like, oh, well, I'm actually ordained. And they were like, really? And I'm like, yeah. So I actually got to do their wedding. And I was like, well, this is awesome. So I like did the whole wedding, got to actually officially marry them like for New York State. So I'm like, well, this is the coolest thing ever. So I've actually got to do that, but it's one of those ones too, where I look at it, I'm like, it's kind of disappointing that like, there's not, more of that out there. Like I'd love to like start a church, and not even a church, just a congregation of like people who are just like down with the whole Dudist concept and be like, let's get together, because I think that's one of the things that people miss. Like if they're in a church and they leave a church, like, I grew up in the church, there is a sense of community there. And when people leave the church, they tend to like lose that. So I think like having some, something like that where you can have that sense of community, but without all of the other, stuff that goes with it. I won't get into the political, religious, and philosophy discussions that I have on organized religion, but being able to create something with that sense of community that doesn't have a lot of other connotations to it, other than just like, hey, treat people decent and do what you're gonna do.
Yeah, that first there's a great cast here.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Just like you're going through it, I'm like, yeah, that's like who's who back basically at that time period. Some of those are still very active.
Yeah.
I used to go to church, and then I kind of, as I got older, it was like I got away from like the organized part of it, and I just was the same thing, like golden rule, just treat people the way you want to be treated. Like and I'm like, I feel like you can boil most things down to that, because then it just puts things like on an equal playing field. And I think as long as you're just kind of like a good person, you can have faith and you can have all the stuff. But I think like my view is always, just be a good person and kind of like,
Yeah.
just like, and I'm not one like, and I think organized religions are totally great if it's a sense of community or sense of purpose or whatever. Absolutely. But again, it's like anything else. Like
There's some things that they have to offer.
yeah. And it's like, you could say, well, I really like joining a bunch of people at a Pink Floyd concert. And those are like my people. I'm like, you know what? That's like your community, your church. Go to a gym, go to a brewery. Like those are your people. So totally fine. I do think community is a very good thing for social creatures. So I think we need community. Okay, let's wrap this up because I sweat more than I should, and I'm like, I need air.
That's
right
surprising because I'm usually
doing
the one
okay?
that's like that. I'm like usually the horrible one. Or
I'm sitting there talking like Casey must be ready to just be like, dude, let's get out of here.
No, I'm usually like I don't know if you ever watched like Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I haven't.
It's like, oh man, there's a scene. One of the guys is like one of the really big cops, and they're like they get tied up. And they were like, so they make him really nervous, and he ends up, he like gets it, he's like duct taped, and he gets out, and he's like, the tape doesn't stick because I'm so juicy. I'm like, that's how I feel most of the time.
I sweat more than a normal person should. So, all right, we're gonna wrap it up there. Casey, this was fun.
Yeah,
as always.
It was a blast.
We'll see each other pretty soon, both concerts and golf. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we got 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I haven't played much golf this year, but
2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, it'll be fun. That'll be a fun day. All right, we're gonna wrap up there. 2:39, Galen Trombley Show. We're out. Thank you for listening to the Galen Trombley Show. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the episode. You can follow me on all social platforms at Galen Trombley. Thanks for listening.